direct snap to Brooks with Conyers next to him. Yep, direct snap. Brooks to the end zone. Touchdown! Texas Tech has the lead over unbeaten Iowa State with 19 seconds left.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Jennings on the play fake, slides it upfield. Matthew Hickner off to the races. Hickner at the 30, full speed, and the big tight end goes 75. It's a Pony Express.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
And it's Sanders ripping through the hole. One man might catch him. Touchdown! 52 yards.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Washington's patient, first down and then some. Inside the red zone, and he is into the end zone. 40 yards for Washington.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Shook out of the pocket. He's going to run for it. Dives! Somersault into the end zone for a Louisville touchdown. Wow.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we are on a Wednesday. As we head, well, there's already been a game last night in college football, and I think there might have been, one or two, and we know that there are games during the middle of the week. But we head for the first weekend after the college football rankings from the committee, the College Football Playoff Committee, gave out their rankings. And, of course, there were some that, that's not right, that doesn't make any sense. And then there were some, that's about right. And so we're going to break that down. And we are loaded up today with guests. Taylor McHargue from ESPN and CBS, Greg Wrubell, BYU's broadcast voice, Stevenson Sylvester, color analyst for Utah, Zeon Chriss, quarterback in Houston, will join us today, Zach Gelb, national talk show host, and then Gary Barnett, former Colorado coach who was at Northwestern too. And then we'll have our Big 12 North pod. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, to the right and to my left, and we're glad you're with us today. Plus, we have Paul's top five. So here's the standings. I looked at this. I didn't overreact either way. I kind of think I thought that's about where they would have BYU. I thought that was a little low, but then again, that's what we're here to discuss. So there we are. The top 25 from the College Football Playoff Committee. Both of you guys digest what you want on who maybe is where they shouldn't be or who's not getting respect, because there's some teams that think, and conferences, that they're not getting respect.
Well, yeah, it's pretty it's pretty easy to say that, when you have Alabama at 11 when they've got 2 losses, and you've got some teams with 1 loss like Penn State ahead of teams that are undefeated like BYU and Indiana. So yeah, I mean there are historical biases in here, and you can see that. This is. I think the one thing that they'll never be able to completely weed out, and I know that they say they will, but is this about what happens this year or about how you feel about the history of a team? Mm-hmm. And clearly Penn State being ranked after that loss against Ohio State, and the history of the team by the numbers is not even close to good when it comes to winning big games. That loss should mean more because they, if you're going on history, then they never win those games. Yeah. So why is BYU behind it? Why is SMU behind it and all that?
We're going to look at a couple of reasons that are some, I guess, statistics that kind of make you wonder, okay, wait a minute, why is this? Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to this just to see what it looked like for the first time and to see kind of how they set the table. I was very quickly reminded that I'm not going to be tuning into these every week, much like the previous playoff rankings, but this first one I was interested in, and I'm going to probably just dabble with it moving forward because I feel like the big story as it pertains to, directly us in some ways in the Big 12 is BYU, and that was a team that got a lot of attention. It seems like I mean, all the writers kind of just follow the leader. You know what I mean? On Twitter, they all do the same thing, the same engagement, the same thing. And, like, it's just – so there was this, like, rash of oh, woe is BYU, like, tweets that just started coming out one after the other and got a lot of play because BYU's got, like, a massive social media presence. And it's a valid point, the BYU is getting disrespected card. But I know I'm going to say what's not popular, but it's true, BYU fans. Just win games and you will be totally fine in the end. Like, you will have a first-round bye like you do in the rankings last night. You look at the rankings last night and what was said beforehand. Don't confuse the seeding with the actual game. So BYU, yeah, they're ninth. They'd have a first-round bye in the actual playoffs. So you see that and you go, oh, my, ninth? Yeah, but you still have a first-round bye as one of the highest-rated conference champions. I know that's not the exact point of the complaints, but I do think in their case, for all of the – every media member fired off a tweet about BYU and getting a lot of play for it, that everybody doing that also knows that they are in control of their destiny and that they are going to be just fine in the end if they win out. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but that really is the straight-to-the-point thing on the rankings for BYU last night. Now, I will say at the same time, clearly the committee does not love the Big 12. Like, that much is very clear. So I think more than BYU being worried, and look, BYU, valid reasons for being ticked off, being ranked behind maybe one or two teams because of their schedule. I don't feel like their schedule is getting nearly enough love for who they've actually beaten. I feel like people are still kind of taking them as though they're like some lucky team or something like that when they went to SMU and beat SMU, and they beat the dog mess out of Kansas State. So they've got two huge wins, and they could have some more down the stretch, the Big 12 championship game, for example. But so I do think – big picture, you're totally fine. I understand why you might feel a bit disrespected, though, but I think the rest of the Big 12 should be far more worried than BYU about the opinion of the Big 12. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
I also think that there is very much name-brand bias still going on, and it's very clear.
Oh, yeah,
it's
because
very
if
clear.
You took the names off Indiana's jersey.
Yes.
Or BYU's jersey, and maybe even another jersey or two, and put somebody else's name that is one of the Augusta National members, then they would be ranked a little bit differently.
Yeah, so I think that BYU was a bit too low, but they'll be okay because of where they are. They are unbeaten. They control their own destiny. They will not be left out. They will not be left without a bye. Just keep winning games. You will be fine. Now, Kansas State, Iowa State, anybody else that's got any scent of a trail of hope to reach the playoff, I think you're a bit more worried about things after last night, because I think it's going to be really difficult for the Big 12 to get a second team in unless things just fall a certain way. I think there's definitely the same big-name biases, like I just mentioned, that was clear in the 4-team playoff. I think it's still clear in the 12-team playoff with the way that some teams were treated compared to others, especially when you saw the one particular stat about BYU having had more top 25 wins than Indiana, Tennessee, Penn State, and Texas combined. And so those things just get overlooked because of the brand name recognition. So I think that's still ingrained in this committee. I don't know how you ever root that out entirely. After all, it's a television product. So Tennessee is always going to look better than Indiana does or better than BYU does. But those are kind of my biggest things. Like, BYU's fine, but I understand feeling a little disrespected. Big 12 should feel a lot disrespected, and you as a conference are not fine. And that's like that direct part of it. As for the rest of it, yeah, if you're Indiana, you might feel a certain type of way, but I think all that's going to work itself out. I'm not flipping my lid over the very first set of rankings.
All right, there's a lot to get. Go ahead. There's a lot to get to. We need to get a lot of it, because then we go straight to Craig. There's a lot of other things to prove what you guys are talking about, or maybe prove the other point, and we will get to that.
Yeah, the next time we have Rich Clark on, I'm going to ask him, is it difficult to convey the point of this is just about today and not about your feelings about a certain program and what they've done? I think that's the hardest thing, because everybody's human. You think that, but you think the certain way, but if you really look at what each team has done this year in the present, then your rankings would look different.
It should never be about what somebody's done in the past.
Yeah.
It should be about what somebody's done this season. Shouldn't even be about what you think is going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. So, okay, here are a couple of notes. Here are the first-round games based on – we don't have that? Okay. Here is Joe Klatt and his thoughts about BYU and the committee bias. There's the quote from Joe Klatt. There are other broadcasters nationally that have their opinions about this too. So your thoughts about what Joel Klatt has to say?
Well, I think we just spent some time talking about it. If you've watched BYU or Indiana, you would rank them higher than some of the teams. You would rank them higher than Penn State. You would probably rank them higher than Tennessee. Tennessee has a very good defense. They have a very wonky offense that sometimes looks fantastic and sometimes doesn't look so great. And Tennessee lost to Arkansas, who is very mediocre. Neither of those teams have lost. So, yeah, I totally agree with what he said on BYU and Indiana. 100% that if you've really watched them, that you're not going to rank them behind, a Tennessee, a Penn State, or someone like that.
Yeah, you wonder if there was a safe spot. Well, we can move BYU down a little bit because they are right now number 4, if that's what it would be, and that they didn't know if they would have any blowback. I don't think they care about the blowback. I think that they do what they do no matter what any of us say. And BYU, like Craig said, you have to just keep winning. You have to keep winning. Ward Manuel, speaking on behalf of the selection committee, when asked about Miami, he said, and here we go. It didn't take long. Offensive prowess, when asked about the gap between the Hurricanes and number 9 unbeaten BYU, God, I almost feel dirty that I should wash my mouth out with soap. It came down to more of an eye test. So let's discuss real quickly the eye test. This from Johnny Linehan. The eye test that had a Hail Mary overturned against Virginia Tech and targeting no call against Cal eye test. That was a thought from him. The eye test, yes, they look dynamic. I remember when the eye test used to mean you had to play defense. Well, that's what BYU does. Miami doesn't do as much of that. I'm not arguing against Miami. They're really good. But it took 1 week, the first damn poll, and we heard eye test.
Yeah, look, just say Miami's undefeated in a power league. Now, the thing you can't do that is then you've got to go like, well, BYU's got to be up higher than they are because they're behind a couple of SEC teams. I would say, don't say eye test. Say Miami is where they are because of Cam Ward. We think Cam Ward's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's a difference maker that not everybody has. And because of Cam Ward, yes, that you don't have to say the words eye test, but quarterback-wise, they are humming along. They've got the number 1 offense in the country. Or just say that. They have the number 1 offense in the country. And it has buoyed them a lot considering their defense is not as good as they wanted it to be, but it doesn't matter because they score, 50 points a week almost.
Yeah, that's one of those quotes where you would just rather watch Miami because they're the bigger brand is how I heard him say that because his explanation doesn't make any damn sense. And it makes me question how much they've actually watched. But I know we'll hear, we sit in a room together and we watch all of these games. We got like 5 screens going on and this and that. But I question that because how could you say in one hand about Miami, particularly their offensive prowess, they were impressive in their win against Louisville. They dominated at the beginning of the year against Florida because Florida's great, right? Came back against Cal in a very late-night contest for Miami. So now they're getting body clock credit. Mm-hmm. He didn't say body clock, but he's giving them body clock credit for a very late-night contest for Miami. And then talks about BYU. BYU as well is very strong. Impressive wins against number 13 and number 19 in a dominating fashion. Talking about the K-State game, it came down to more of the eye test, and we ranked them. So, I think he's given Miami more of the benefit of the doubt because you're spitting out 2 top 25 rankings, whereas for Miami, you're spitting out that they played late at night against Cal and they beat Florida at the beginning of the year and were impressive against Louisville, as opposed to kicking the dog mess out of a ranked Kansas State team who's still ranked and also beating SMU, who's still ranked at SMU. Like, spare me, dude. That doesn't make me think that he's being on the up and up as far as just it simply being the eye test. I mean, I know that's what they're using. The eye test, though, could mean that logo makes my eyes bigger when I watch them because it's the resumes are clear. BYU has a better resume. They have better wins. It's not even close. They have better wins. So I just question how much they're really watching BYU in some cases. And I do think they're going to probably suffer from some of that brand bias, but as I said at the top, I'm not going to fret too much over these first rankings. BYU, if they win out, are fine. They are totally fine. They're not going to get left out. They're not going to not have a first-round bye. If they win out, they will be sitting there top 4 with a first-round bye, and they will be totally fine.
Yeah, and they got to be careful because there's not much room for error because Boise State being where they are That opens the door up for Jeremiah Dickey and the Broncos athletic department and football team. They're in a very good spot because of the rest of their schedule, who they've played, losing barely to Oregon. They're a very fun team to watch. They are in a good position and almost waiting to pounce.
Yeah, they are, but if you're BYU, you do know as much as you shouldn't fret if you win out. Yeah, if you lose a game, you're probably tumbling pretty dramatically. So there is that concern, that nervousness. So there's one solution, and that's just to keep winning games. Otherwise, you open yourself up to them allowing some movement that could hurt you and hurt you bad. So basically the point being, destiny's in your hands. You know, I know it feels like it's in the hands of the playoff committee. It is to some small degree, but for right now at least, with no losses in your loss column, destiny is in your hands. You only allow it to be in their hands when you lose a game.
Yep.
So just win out. That's my point. I know it seems too simple for a radio show to just say the obvious, but it would make more sense to be like, the committee hates BYU and like do all that kind of jazz, but I think it's pretty simple. Just keep winning games.
I don't think anybody in there doesn't like BYU or doesn't respect Boise State, but there are some biases, and that's why there's a large committee. One of those, by the way, is Mack Rhoades, the Baylor director of athletics. By the way, this is not complaining. This is not whining. If you are like, well, wait a minute, you or us or whoever, this is breaking it down and discussing what was released. We would be dumb just to say, hey, here are the 12 or 25 teams, and we move on to yet other discussions. But look at a couple other stats. This is from our good friend Cody Kellner. Record versus opponents with a winning record. BYU and Indiana are both unbeaten, 3-0 and 2-0. Record versus bowl-eligible opponents, BYU is 2-0. Record versus current top 25, BYU is 2-0. So those are some of the inside the numbers. And then also this one, there are 5 teams in college football. These are not the unbeaten teams. In fact, the only one unbeaten in that list is Oregon and BYU, I believe. 5 teams, actually, there are 7 teams there. Which one? Is that from Cody Kellner? Yeah. That have wins against 3 teams that are bowl eligible. So there we are with that. 7 teams have 2 wins versus the current CFP top 25, SMU, Oregon, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, and also Texas A&M.
Yeah, you know, some of those teams are ranked behind teams that have none of those. Like say Tennessee. Yeah. Well, I mean, Tennessee has one. But like they're there. So it's weird. Again, I think it's just the problem is historical biases. People see a jersey, like you said, Craig. They see that and that 30 for 30 was better than Pony Express.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I agree with that, but I just don't think it's all that though, guys. I mean, I think this is reaching overreaction to the first set of rankings already. You know what I mean? Like, there's 4 games to play for everybody. So again, that's why I know it's not the popular radio show answer, but it's pretty simple. If you're BYU, win your games, and you will be fine. I'll keep saying that because that's the clearest as day response to what we saw last night. To all the biases, to all the eye test opinions, you control your own destiny as much as you possibly can. You don't if you lose to Utah this weekend. Yep. As far as the rest of it goes, the 2 top 25 wins and this and that, I mean, that's not the barometer of, hey, let's rank them by top 25 wins. It's an element of the overall package, and it's just a matter of how much weight do they give certain things, and you can fairly question, well, how much weight's being given to top 25 wins if this team with none or 1 is this much higher than this team with 2? But you've got to break it down further than just a simple metric like that. So I do think at this point, with a month to go, eye test is part of it. I mean, that is going to be a part of having a human committee. And whether we like it or not, it's not the BCS. That's just straight machine and here's numbers and put them out. But you know what? If you lined them up next to each other, they're almost identical.
Yeah, I think out of the 12 teams, there was like 2 that were
like barely different. Yeah. So like the computers basically said the same thing that we saw last night. So again, it's the first rankings. I'll be more worried if they still had, an unbeaten BYU at 9 3 weeks from now, after having won 3 more games. Then I'd be like, okay, wait a second here. But yeah, I think a committee, I mean, look, you can argue that 8 of the best teams are in the SEC or in the Big Ten. As much as I know that's not popular probably with some of our audience, Who's to say that's not true?
We don't know, though.
Right.
But that's why it's good that we have as many teams that are going to be able to figure that out.
And there's still going to be more eliminations this weekend, and there will be more eliminations the week after, and so on and so forth. And maybe this is all moot because Utah just puts together a hell of a game this weekend. Or another one of these teams that we're talking about gets knocked off this weekend, not just the Cougars. But, there's definitely some of the same complaints that you had with the 4-team ranking. I think we can safely say that in terms of biases or just what the committee is kind of doing in terms of talking out both sides of their mouths in some cases. And most of all, let's acknowledge that what the committee will always do, they will say whatever they need to say to fit the narrative that they want to say that week. So if it's game control or it's top 25 wins or
exactly
it's
right.
the conference or whatever, we get all involved in that, but it just switches to whatever needs to be said to justify their rankings every week.
Here's the thing. The eye test, it took them less than a week. It took them the first damn show. There will be their record against the top 25, but apparently that was not the case this week. But maybe in a couple of 2 or 3 weeks, that's the case. It might be controlling the game. I don't know how many of the teams inside the top 5 or 10 can say that they've always been able to control the game because some of them have a loss. It is the first week. There are more to come. We'll know in the first week of December who's going to be a part of the 12. It's good. The AP poll and all that will still come out on Monday, the coaches poll, but there we are with that. Here's a note about Boise State that I thought was just stunning. They have not been stopped by an opponent in their last 52 trips inside the red zone with Dirk Cutter as the offensive coordinator. 48 scores, 4 end-of-the-game kneel downs, 0 stops inside the opponent's red zone, 20-yard line, their last 52 possessions inside the 20. That's insane. That's just insane. That's a great number. The kneel downs, of course, the clock's running out. You're closing out the game.
Yeah, I would advise people to look at the biggest reason for that is they have an elite running back. Imagine that. I watch like I'm watching some other sport where running backs aren't that valuable. Yeah, the player who can get the ball and inside the 20s when you have less room to throw the ball, that's way more valuable if you have Ashton Jeanty on your team or Gente.
I'm working on that.
Janta, but Ashton Jeanty on your team, you're going to score a lot. So all the NFL and college teams that think by committee is a great idea and anybody can do this. No, not anybody can do this. Get yourself a stud if you can get one.
Yeah. So Boise State right there in the middle of it. It's kind of fun. Next week, as Craig said, you have wins and losses this week. Will be fun, but there will be a different next week. It'll be controlling the game or whatever. But get used to that. We've seen that ever since really the first year in 2014.
Do you have a graphic of the bracket from based on last night?
I thought I sent that.
You didn't. I'm looking at it now. You didn't have the person who it was on the email, so
okay.
I didn't have it.
Well, here let's. I have them in front of me, and we can discuss that because
I just think it's cool to look at.
I think and I also think one of what I look for is not who's ranked here and there. What I look at is I don't think there's any question, and nobody could probably convince me otherwise, that when they do seed, the 4 top seeds, that's conference champions, the 4 highest ranked conference champions. When they do seed the 5 through 12, there's nobody that can convince me that they won't set it up to where you won't have Georgia, Alabama in the second round or Ohio State against whoever in the second round. But I did see that there's a chance that Texas, based on last night, could play Alabama in the first round if they're a part of the top 12.
Yeah, but I think it's fun to look at week to week just to know we're getting matchups like that, but that's not going to happen. I think there's more. There's 4 to 5 more games left. I don't think that's going to end up happening.
No, okay. This is what Oregon, Georgia, Miami, BYU would have an off week. Ohio State and Boise State, Texas, Alabama, Penn State, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and Indiana. Now, then you start. Okay, who's Oregon going to play? They're going to play either Tennessee or they're going to play either Ohio State and Boise State.
No, Indiana or Tennessee.
Okay. Who's Georgia? Who's Oregon? Who's Georgia going to play?
Either Notre Dame or Penn State.
Miami, the 3rd seed, if they end up where they are.
They play Alabama or Tennessee.
Why Alabama and Tennessee?
Because that's 7 versus
that's where
third.
the bracket goes.
That's 7 versus 10 or 7 versus 11, whatever it is.
So
6 versus 11 would go play the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be Texas, Alabama.
Texas 5th.
No, they're not.
No, guys.
6, okay.
You just said who's Miami playing, right?
Yeah,
They play Texas or Alabama.
that's what I said. Yeah, you were looking at where they are. No, we're looking at remember now.
Yeah.
And then BYU, if they get the 4th seed, they would play the winner between Ohio State and Boise State.
Correct.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be unbelievable if it ended up, which Boise State and BYU in the next round. Ohio State, of course, would say something about that, but that would get those 2 teams another round into at least the 3rd round of the college football playoff, and then who knows if that's going to happen yet or not. Mike Gundy, late yesterday. I apologize to those who my comments during Monday's media call offended. My intent was not to offend any of our fans and who have supported us and this program through the years. Very short and very sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
You think it's sweet?
somebody made him do that. Somebody said, "Hey, you've got to put the genie back in the bottle if you can." And I'm sure he wasn't trying to offend fans. Like, no coach is usually trying to offend fans, but you have to know that there is a group of people who are hanging on every word you say, and hanging on every word you say even harder when you stink, and they stink right now. So, he's not used to that. So I get, kind of flying off the handle a little bit or going rogue. But, yeah, no, somebody made him do that.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody made him do it or not, but I know it was about as short and to the point as possible, and it sure came across that way if you were more inclined to believe that somebody put a gun to his head and made him write that out or at least put his name on it or whatever. It was short and to the point enough that it was kind of funny and very flippant. And at the same time, not something that you necessarily expected to see him do. So take it however you want to. I didn't need an apology from him, but I'm certainly not an Oklahoma State, alum or fan who's probably feeling some type of way about this season and his comments. So maybe that was good for you to hear that. I do think there was a good portion of his quote that was left out the other day in terms of the comparison. It didn't make it that much better, but at least made it more understandable what he was trying to say and failing so miserably at saying before he veered off course and started taking personal shots at his own fans. But what he was trying to say made sense initially, and then he veered off. So, I can see where that warranted an apology for a fan base who's pretty fed up, and you still got a month to go, and you still got, games at home that you want people to show up for, and you're not going to be able to put a lipstick on this pig, but you can start to try to build something for next year. But you didn't do yourself any favors when you started attacking those who support you. So we'll see how this is taken in the coming days and how they finish it out. But not surprised to see an apology, and not surprised that it was short, to the point, and almost could be read as sarcastic if you wanted to take it that way, because I don't think Mike Gundy's probably all that sorry, and I think he probably thinks that everybody who needs this apology is the exact type of people he was talking about, but he had to do what he had to do.
Why, though? Why? If you don't really believe, if he didn't, why? Then why apologize?
Because it wasn't his choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because your entire fan base is pissed at you right now. Whether you believe what you said was true or not, at some point you're not the end-all, be-all, and maybe it dawned on him that, hey, you're not untouchable. And maybe it dawned on him that, like, hey, people will stop coming to games. Go recruit now, pal. Like, who supports you? When things are down, who's supporting them right now outside of Oklahoma State fans?
No, look.
Nobody. So if you're going to piss off the one people that support you, you may want to rethink that, especially when you did talk out of turn. And even if some people took it extremely the wrong way, you said it in a way that was easy to take it that way. And quite frankly, there was no spinning some of it. You were just saying some stuff that you shouldn't have been saying, quite frankly, because it was insulting to a lot of people out there. So I don't demand the guy be fired or anything other than that. Hey, you made your apology. Great. Let's move on. Go try and win a game and go try to rebuild that program, because it desperately needs some care this offseason.
All right. If you're an Oklahoma State fan, and we have some of you that are in the chat, or any topic we bring up, and you're a fan of that school, whoever it might be, give us your opinion, and we'll read some of those to you. And some of you said he didn't mean it. Some of you said he did. He had a follow-up tweet, which I didn't follow that part, whatever. So here is Kyle Whittingham, Utah and BYU. We have 2 guests today to discuss BYU and Utah, the holy war that's being played this weekend. Here is Utah football coach Kyle Whittingham on what makes BYU so good.
BYU's obviously improved quite a bit year to year. Who or what is the strength of that offense?
I'd say the QB is the catalyst. You look at individual rushers, individual receivers. There's nobody that just jumps out statistically. It's a collaborative effort, but the quarterback is the catalyst, in my opinion, and playing good football. He's amongst the league leaders in pass efficiency. He's made some just a bunch of really timely runs during the course of the season, runs that have made big difference maker type of runs. And so I would say that is without a doubt the guy that makes it all go. But again, he's got a good supporting cast, but again, nobody is just jumping out on the stat line. I don't know if they have a top 10 receiver or a top 10 running back, but you don't need to. You don't have to do that to be successful. And then as a team, very opportunistic football team. They're playing good complementary defense, offense to each other. Defense is taking the ball away like crazy. Offense is protecting the ball. They're number 2 in the country, in the conference in turnover margin. So they're doing a really good job playing off each other offensively and defensively.
All right, that game is coming up this weekend, and obviously with all of this on the line, not only the rivalry, but also the Big 12 championship berth in the sights of BYU, plus where they are when it comes to the college football playoff. We will have a lot of people with feedback on the college football playoff standings and on many other things, including, as I mentioned, 2 different broadcasters, both close with BYU and also Utah. Excited to hear from Zeon Chriss, the quarterback at Houston, and he's given that team a big spark. Garrett Ross is here. Emery Winter is here. Jack McKenzie is always around. We have 365 Sports tonight, every weeknight at 10:30 on the local CW. If you have not yet, hit the like and also subscribe button. We would appreciate you doing that. Our first guest, Taylor McHargue from ESPN and CBS Sports. He's next. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be. And when I say used to be, as you get older, men, 1 out of every 3 or 4 men will have a symptomatic issue or more of low testosterone. 3 out of 4 men. 1 out of every 3 or 4 men. Maybe that's you. If you have sex drive issues, if you are dealing with ED, and it's just all of a sudden, hey, what the hell's going on here? You're not the only one. It happens. If you're not sleeping as well, if you're not feeling the way you normally felt as far as your energy, your lethargic, whatever else it might be, Dr. Petty can help you by increasing your testosterone level with an option. And so here's what you do. Get on the website, PettyClinicLowT.com. They'll set you up to go to a clinic or a lab to get your blood work. They get the results. He will then be in touch with you if your testosterone level is too low. Maybe not much low, but it might be starting to drop, and they'll monitor that. Or it's really low. PettyClinicLowT.com.
I know some of you have some concerns with everything that's in social media and the news right now, and we need to take it serious. We're paying a lot of attention to what the governing authorities and the guidance we're getting from the experts are saying. We're doing basic things that should keep us safe on a regular basis. We're doing some additional things, like, for instance, if you've been traveling outside of the country, perhaps you'd let us know and we can reschedule it to another time. If you're ill, running fever, perhaps if it's not an emergency, we'll reschedule it for another time. We might be implementing some of the things based on guidelines, but we're open. We're planning on staying open until otherwise notified that we have to mandate shutdown for public safety. And we are very comfortable we can provide safe and effective care. But if you have any concerns, contact us, talk to us when you're here. Because of schools being closed, we're getting a lot of demand right now with parents and teachers. In addition to that, if they do shut us down, our schedule is going to be difficult. So we would ask you, if you can, make your appointment. Let's get things accomplished right now when we know that we're open and we feel comfortable that we're being safe. And we'll apprise you of any changes that occur as it goes along. And again, if you have any concerns, email us, call us, just talk to us. Check on our website, stonewood-dental.com, and on social media for updates or if there are any changes.
Don't miss our best price deals during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels. This month, save big on the truck you've been looking for, like the new Rams. Shop our great selection of inventory in-store or online today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
I'll never get used to this.
Another So-So pizza from So-So's Pizza? But wait, there's Marco's! Our new triple pepperoni Magnifico pizza is stacked with classic, crispy cupped, and new bold shredded pepperoni. It's triple the flavor, and only at Marco's. Just $11.99.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's home sleep test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Here we go, waiting on Taylor McHargue of ESPN and CBS Sports. Join us on his thoughts of the opening or unveiling of week one of the college football playoffs from Wes on the chat room or in the chat room. I didn't take any offense talking about Gundy. I love the follow-up tweet, Gundy taking all the attention off the team and putting it on him. He is really good at that, go Pokes. From Tracy Fisher. My cousin is an Oklahoma season ticket holder and is not renewing. She said they're fed up. From Brad. He was not talking about Oklahoma State fans per se, but he was talking about people in general that just like to gripe and moan on an everyday basis.
Yeah, no, that's true. I just think the majority of people that are taking that information in and reacting to that are Oklahoma State fans. That's what I was attempting to say, not that he was saying, hey, Oklahoma State fans are losers who don't accomplish anything in life. I think that was clear, but that's your target audience and who you're mostly talking to there. So that's what I meant by that. And I didn't take any offense to it because I just read the quote and heard his interview and all of that, and I just don't take it the same way as everybody else does. So I understand with more context what he was trying to say. I also know that he delivered it poorly and probably needed to say, like, hey, my bad. But if he didn't need to say that for you, I'm fine with that too. I really don't care, honestly, about this story that much. I think it was a big deal for the 5 minutes that it was because, you know, he's a guy who can be kind of controversial, and certainly when you're struggling on the field, people are a little bit more uptight. So that blew up in a way that, that was kind of big a couple of days ago. But at this point, I'm like, hey, move on and rebuild your team and get back in the good graces of your fans. And the best way to do that is to go win games, not to be apologizing for sound bites and whatnot. So, yeah, like, let's move on and, everybody just go back to where we were.
My suggestion, my just question would be, I think you kind of mentioned this, Greg, is who is complaining about Oklahoma State other than Oklahoma State fans? Like it's not like on the lips of everyone.
Yeah,
like
maybe
the people who are mad are the people who are the ones who are directly affected by it.
Right.
I'm not mad that Oklahoma State's not that good. Doesn't affect me. I'm not a fan of them. So I'm not going to complain about them. I might critique them on the air about, what's factually wrong with them. But, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, they can't tackle anybody. Like, that's a problem. But the people who are complaining, the people you're talking about, in large numbers are their fans. Because that's who'd be mad about it. No one else would.
All right, we're joined by Taylor McHargue of ESPN, CBS Sports, color analyst. Thank you, Taylor, for being a part of it. Good to have you. By the way, nice win for Rice against the midshipmen. How about that? What were your thoughts when you saw, which is the first of a handful, of the release of the college football standings?
Well, I thought for the top four, by and large, I thought it was about what we expected. I thought the disrespect for Indiana is probably what jumped out most to me. If you take Michigan's helmet and you swap out those decals, I think that is a top 5 team in Indiana. And I understand the argument that they haven't played anybody, right? But for the teams that they have played, I thought Joel Klatt from Fox did a great job of mapping this out from a year ago, what Michigan's resume looked like and what their schedule looked like to this point in the season versus what Indiana's looks like to this point in the season. It's not all about who they've played. It's also how they've played. And I think they've been dominant in specific spots. I think about how they looked against Nebraska. Then Nebraska turns around and goes and gives Ohio State all they can handle, beat Washington playing with your backup quarterback. Now, the good news for Indiana is you're going to get a pretty clear answer in 2 weeks when they have to go to Ohio State. And that matchup is going to tell us a lot about, is this Hoosiers team for real? I think if that is a one-score game in any direction, obviously if they win, but if they lose that by a score or less, to me, this becomes a playoff team. And I think if they sit there at 11-1, they don't make the they don't make the Big Ten championship, but they're sitting there at 11-1 and their one close loss is to Ohio State. I think that is a playoff team, and I think that's my biggest takeaway from the initial rankings.
Taylor, do you see a path more reasonably for the Big 12 or ACC to get 2 teams?
I think it's at this point, it's probably the ACC. I think about if you end up with SMU and Miami in their ACC championship, if SMU loses that game close and BYU ends up winning the Big 12, and your 2 losses, if you're SMU, are the conference champion from the Big 12 that's now in the playoff, and Miami, who also may end up having the Heisman Trophy winner, I think SMU actually has a better shot at getting in as an at-large bid than Iowa State would. And this is assuming, again, that BYU beats Iowa State. Now, if you end up with 1 loss BYU, 1 loss Iowa State, and SMU were to lose handily to Miami, then I think obviously that becomes a different story. But the Big 12, if you just go down the line throughout the season, and we've talked a lot about this through the offseason, this was the concern with the Big 12. It's been the case with the Big 12 in the past. It's a conference that cannibalizes itself. And if you go through the season, how many times have we seen spreads be 2.5 points, 3 points, 3.5 points? And there's so much balance in this league, and that's why you end up at the end of the season where if you got really anybody can beat anybody for the most part. There's a couple teams at the bottom that you don't really count. I think it hasn't been great for the Big 12 by and large that the favorites coming into the season have underperformed dramatically. Obviously, Kansas, Oklahoma State. I think that's been one of the biggest disappointments of the entire season. And I think, TCU Baylor last week was a great example of this league, right? Where if you play that game 10 times, that may go 5-5. And if you play that on the road, it's still probably a 1-score game for whoever has to be on the road. I thought that was really indicative of what this league is. But as it plays out and because of that parity, I think the Big 12 is going to struggle to get 2 teams in.
Taylor, with BYU, I mean, they control their own destiny. I know last night they see the 8 or 9 pop up, but they'll be a 4 with a bye. Like, they just need to keep winning games, I think, is the basic message. You can feel a little bit of pressure, though, because you're clearly not being eyed the same way as other unbeaten teams. So just looking at BYU, is it all about just locking in and just winning everything in front of you and as simple as that, or is there more to it than just that?
I think there might be more to it as well, because there's a couple opportunities in their schedule the rest of the way where you do not, if you're BYU, you don't want to give the committee any excuse if they end up losing the Big 12 championship to Iowa State. And what I mean by that is, they've got games against some of the teams in the bottom of the league through the rest of the slate. They've got Arizona State, they've got Houston, they've got Kansas. They need to win those convincingly. And I think you could make the case for Iowa State as well. How you play in these games matters. But for BYU, this is a team that they remind me in some cases a lot of what Indiana has done as well. They've snuck up on everybody, and their margin for victory has been a lot stronger in some cases than I think what Iowa State's has been, especially in key games. And that win on the road earlier in the season against SMU for BYU, that's gotten stronger as the year has gone along as well. But I think this is the time of year for BYU. Style points. If they win out, obviously they control their own destiny. It doesn't matter if they win all of these games by 1 point. But if they were to, you're trying to pad your stats, so to speak, so that if in the event they lose to Iowa State, and that's who we're assuming, I keep saying Iowa State, it may be Colorado, the way that they're playing. Regardless, for BYU, they need to be in a position where they can point back to some style points against the bottom of the league. They don't want any of these games close against like a Houston or a Kansas.
But if BYU was to lose and not win the championship, SMU doesn't need that because they beat SMU straight up, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And for SMU, it's funny, when they lost that game earlier in the season, if you remember, SMU had played Nevada in week 0 close, and then they lose to a BYU team that was picked in the bottom of the league. And that was the part of the season where we're all saying, okay, they weren't ready for the ACC, and it was hold your horses, let's wait a little bit. And then obviously a dominant win against what was an undefeated Pitt team at the time. So it's been really impressive what Brett Lashley and that team have accomplished to this point in the season. But you're exactly right. With BYU, SMU has that tiebreaker ultimately over BYU. Again, for SMU, they just don't need to be in a position where they get blown out by a Miami. That's the only case that I could see. That would put the committee in a predicament if you're having to you go head to head, and SMU did beat BYU. But if they look ugly at the end of the year, I think that's where it starts to get a little bit muddy, even though they would have had the head to head.
This week, Georgia and Ole Miss. If Ole Miss loses, they're out. If they win, they're re-solidifying who they are. Georgia's been bad, by their standards. Carson Beck's been throwing interceptions all over the place. Do you think it shifts Georgia's narrative too much if they lose?
I would say Georgia hasn't been bad. I would say Carson Beck's been bad. And I think about the Texas game where Georgia's defense, I thought for the entire season, if you ask me to put, what's the most impressive performance by any one side of the ball all season, I think it's Georgia's defense against Texas. Just absolutely dominant. Their plan to get after Quinn Ewers and make him uncomfortable was fantastic. The only reason that game was close was because Carson Beck had the early interceptions. And that's continued. And the 3 interceptions that he had against Florida, what stands out to me just seems like a loss of confidence. Some of these throws, these are open windows. It's not like he's getting hit, he's under duress, or he's missing reads. He knows where to go with the ball. Some of these are just not finishing throws. And that's what I'm looking for against Ole Miss, because if Georgia, this is the type of opportunity where if he turns the ball over against Ole Miss and their offense is in any sort of rhythm, this is especially since this is being played at Ole Miss, this is absolutely a game that Ole Miss can win. And you said it exactly right. This now vaults them right back into the conversation for, okay, is this potentially an at-large team? For Georgia, it's also the opportunity, if they can figure out these issues on offense and play a cleaner brand of football, this is the type of win where if they go, and it seems like every time Georgia's in a big spot on the road, Kirby Smart figures out a way to just get the most out of his guys. This is another great example of an opportunity for that. And if they come out and win by multiple scores and they're dominant, then I think it further solidifies Georgia. And I don't want to make too much of it. This is still one of the best teams in college football. It may end up being the best team in college football, but they've got to have better play out of Carson Beck.
The big noon kickoff game out in Lubbock, Texas Tech coming off of a nice bounce-back win, taking down Iowa State in Ames, and number 20 Colorado. You mentioned the Buffaloes kind of being right there in that mix for the Big 12 still. Any thoughts on Dion and company heading out to West Texas?
Well, first off, unbelievable win for Joey McGuire and Texas Tech. I mean, as you guys know, Baylor had gone up and beaten them recently, and that was – I don't think there's any question that was the biggest win to this point in the Joey McGuire era at Tech. Colorado just keeps winning. And I go back to, I think it started, this may have been 5 or 6 weeks ago now, but I believe it was the first league game where Colorado goes on the road to Central Florida. And I thought Central Florida would win that game outright. And that was the first time that we saw a physicality on the defensive side specifically for Colorado. And they have not let that up. That's carried through up to this point in the season. Huge game. Obviously, it'll be an early kick for Colorado. It'll feel like 10 a.m., but just the hour difference. But regardless, it's an early kick. I think for Colorado, now you start to really begin that conversation. If they win this game against Texas Tech, and it's sort of already happening, but that conversation about this being a legitimate threat in not only to make the playoffs, but to win games in the playoffs. I think there's a key difference there. That starts to become very real if they beat the Red Raiders.
It seems like when there's a conference like the Big 12 and maybe the ACC with Clemson, okay, Florida State's disappeared, but those two conferences when maybe others eat each other or cannibalize each other, we hear that in those two conferences. Why don't we hear that much in the SEC or the Big 10 when they do it?
Well, part of it now is obviously the teams that have been added, right? You've taken, for the Big Ten, for example, Oregon now gets counted in the Big Ten. Indiana, I keep going back to that. Indiana is a great example of a team that's sort of been able to hide because the leagues are so big now that you have certain teams where the strength of schedule it ends up they just play more of the bottom end of the league than the top. It's harder to find parity. But I think if you look at power ratings, the ACC and the Big 12, if you go from the middle of the pack down, is weaker than the middle of the pack down in the Big 10 and the SEC. Now, I think it'll be very interesting during bowl season to see how these perform, but I don't think there's any question the top of both of those leagues, meaning the Big 10 and the SEC, there are better teams at the top in both of those leagues than there are in the ACC and in the Big 12. I don't think there's a clear favorite at this point. You could say BYU, but BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado, you make those teams play in a round robin, and I think that ends up pretty close to 500 for all three of those. I don't think it's there's one that's a particular – it would be dominant over the other two, where out of the SEC, Georgia, to me, is starting to feel like they're clearly separating themselves. It'll be interesting to see. I think Quinn Ewers still a little bit banged up. How do they look against Florida this week? And then the Big Ten has become really interesting because Oregon, to me, looks like the most complete team in college football, and that win over Ohio State, looking stronger as the year goes along. But we have some fascinating matchups, and I think this playoff picture will start to become more clear in the next week or two.
Can you explain Penn State to me and why people think that they're reliable to win anything of substance?
No, other than I think Penn State fans, like all fans, you have to have that belief because that's what being a fan is. And if you're a player or a coach, you have to tell yourself that next time is going to be the time that you pull it off. But I thought that was as good an opportunity as Penn State has had maybe ever against an Ohio State team that we talk about a top 10 matchup between these two. Will Howard didn't play well. And the turnovers, especially the fumble out of the end zone, and a pick six, think about those two huge plays, along with Penn State having 2 trips in the red zone, in the deep red zone, inside the 5-yard line, and you don't come away with points, much less touchdowns, and not even a field goal. James Franklin continues, and it's warranted. The criticism is warranted. I believe it's 0-7 for Penn State under James Franklin when they are a home underdog. Has not won a single time when they're playing in Happy Valley as a home underdog. That's inexcusable. And it's similar to, I think, how it's funny what Ryan Day has been dealing with Ohio State fans, where they're going 11-1, but their only losses to Michigan, and you've got a faction of Ohio State fans saying they want to fire Ryan Day. And now it's the same thing for Penn State. They just can't get past traditionally Michigan or Ohio State, and that's why we've seen Penn State over and over. Feels like every year they end up number 8 or 9. They're 10-2, and I think they're by far the program that benefits the most from the expanded playoff because they still have a great path to not only getting in but hosting a playoff game. But just moving forward, there's nothing that leads me to believe that if they've got to go on the road in the playoffs, are they going to get a win? Probably not. Do I think that they're going to make a deep run in these big spots? No, probably not. And within Big Ten play, just in the years moving forward, I don't think there's any reason to believe that they get over the hump with Ohio State.
Taylor, we kind of talked about BYU there at the beginning just in terms of their seeding after last night, but they got the Holy War in Salt Lake City against the down Utah team, but both teams have had a couple weeks to get ready for this one. Any insights on your end to just the Holy War or this matchup or even maybe what you've seen from Jake Retzlaff, because obviously a pretty important one out in SLC this Saturday night?
Huge game, obviously made more interesting with Cam Rising being shut down in Utah and not being what we thought they would be. But I do think it's interesting. BYU, they're still only, I think it's a 4-point favorite right now. So it's not like they're coming in as a multiple score favorite. This will be, I would liken it to like a Texas-Oklahoma, and this year didn't go that way. But usually that game in a rivalry game, it ends up being a one-score game. I think that's probably how this plays out. But this will be in the late window. Well, the entire country will be watching at least for the first period of the game. And for BYU, this is a great spot for them. We talked a little bit ago about being convincing. I mentioned that against some of the bottom teams in the Big 12. It really would matter here. If they come out and play well and they're strong against Utah and it's a convincing win, I think more and more you would see it on the East Coast and teams that are viewers that may not get to see BYU all the time. This would be a big spot for them to be able to say, well, this team's still undefeated, and even with their backup for Utah at quarterback, if BYU wins convincingly, I think that becomes more and more impressive as the season's gone along because, again, this is a team that surprised everybody. They were picked, I believe it was 11th in the media poll coming into the season in the Big 12.
Yep. There's some teams at the bottom. Arizona State has had a nice run, and the Big 12 is always just it's a guessing game at times. Taylor, what game do you have this week?
Bye week. My second bye week. So we'll I have not been to my high school, Vista Ridge, since my last game there. So I'm going to see a high school football game Friday night, which I'm pretty fired up about.
Enjoy it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Taylor McHargue, CBS ESPN color analyst with us on Wednesdays in the 3 o'clock hour. We appreciate his time. And around the corner, Craig brought up BYU and Utah in our next two segments. Greg Wrubell and also Stevenson Sylvester. That is next. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club. Man, they had a busy weekend the last couple of weekends with Oklahoma State being homecoming, and last week their game against TCU, Baylor's, was loaded up because of all of the events that they had. Their food, which has always been delicious, is fantastic. Whether it's in a suite watching a game or a Lowe's box, or if you go there on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or maybe a Saturday night just to enjoy their dinner. The chefs do an amazing job. There's always a membership available. And I remember about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we mentioned that they were having a push during a tailgate that they do. It's an HEB tailgate on game days. There's not another, till the end of November with Kansas. But they had a really, really good day with new memberships that they have. Tasting events, there's one coming up. In fact, it's this evening where they're having some special drinks and also, I believe, some like seafood, like lobster tails, and that at the Baylor Club. Mike Mosel, they host great events or one that you want to host inside of their stadium. The Baylor Club. Memberships available. For more information, get on Facebook with the Baylor Club.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Greg Wrubell, voice of BYU. We've loved the time we've had him on since the fall when all of crazy started, when they were a part of the announcement of joining the Big 12, and we've had him on many times. Love the coverage of BYU. And now this week, Greg, my goodness. So how much different, the coaches, you try to do it differently, but how much different is it BYU-Utah week?
Well, they haven't played regularly for a long, long time, and now they're back and doing it in a league. I think that's an important facet of this. Is that this game will mean annually a lot more based on what it means to the standings and postseason implications. And this year, ironically, we have such a reversal of fortune, right? In the preseason, Utah was picked #1 and BYU's picked 13th. Check the standings today. BYU's #1 and Utah is, you guessed it, 13th. Yeah. So an exact role reversal in this. So it won't mean as much as it might in other years when the two teams are contending. This game means a lot more to BYU than Utah, clearly. For Utah, this might kind of salvage the season and help them kind of resurrect things late, help get them to a bowl game. They're still 2 wins away in a pretty tough closing stretch. So Utah's playing for that. But they've got under the surface issues to deal with first and trying to find a starting quarterback for this game, let alone going out to win this game and slow down BYU. But for the Cougs, I mean, it's all out. Like, Utah's just the next team you got to beat. As we saw in the CFP rankings last night, 8-0 is not getting BYU the kind of respect you'd think it might get, with 2 of those wins being against teams in the CFP rankings, SMU on the road and K-State in a blowout. And yet there's a 3-spot separation between BYU and 1-loss Boise State. That tells you all you need to know. And it sets up BYU's marching orders quite obviously. BYU's got to go out, win, probably win big on some weeks, and show some style points. And so, yeah, it's always important to beat Utah. But this year, more than any other, Utah is just another game. You got to win to get to where you want to be. Because right now, it looks like the objective has to be win out. Based on what we saw last night from the CFP, it looks like BYU's got to win out to get where they want to go. You'd like to think that a 12-1 Big 12 team would be ranked better than, say, a 12-1 G6 team like Boise. But I don't want to bet that after what I saw last night. So, yeah, big game, huge game, holy war, call it what you will. It's a big deal. But it's ever more than ever, focus on the next opponent and move on.
Greg, this game because it's a rivalry game, the normal rules kind of get thrown out the window a bit. I think on the surface, if you look at the reason you're talking about that, reversal of fortune is because Utah has not had consistent quarterback play. BYU has had some of the most in the entire conference, if not the country, and Jake Retzlaff. So, but this is a game where nerves happen. Is that the biggest concern outside of a defense that's still pretty tough for Utah?
Yeah, defense is always going to be good, and it is good again for Utah. The offense is just not had it this year, and that's where the biggest difference lies right now. But, yeah, there have been a lot of games where it becomes an outlier game, and a team that was playing a certain way going in, it's usually BYU, doesn't play the way it had been coming out of it. And more than anything else, it's been the sudden change plays in this rivalry. First, I want to underscore this point. Since BYU last won in a blowout fashion against Utah, by the way, that was 1996. So BYU won 37-17 back in 1996. Since that game, BYU's not beaten Utah by double digits. And since that game, there have been 23 meetings, and 19 have been decided by single digits. So Utah's had the rare blowouts when they've happened. But for the most part, 19 of 23 are single-digit games. 18 of the 23 are one-score games, meaning 8 points or fewer. So in those tight games, it most often comes down to who squandered a possession and who got an extra one, which brings us to the turnover number. Check this. During Utah's recent 9-game win streak over BYU, by the way, BYU broke that streak back in 2021. During the 9-game Utah win streak, BYU had 29 giveaways to Utah's 14. Okay, so a better than 2-1 advantage for Utah in terms of turnovers for and against. But more interestingly, of those 29 BYU giveaways, 9 were Utah touchdowns, meaning 9 pick sixes or scoop and scores. BYU, 0 defensive scores off their 14 takeaways. So that's how, in large fashion, Utah was winning those tight games, finding an extra possession, and scoring with it in a lot of instances off a BYU giveaway. So in these kinds of games, I don't want to focus on the most obvious thing, but it has been that way in this rivalry. Let's note this. In the last 2 games BYU won in this rivalry, the one before the streak and the one to end the streak, BYU had 0 turnovers, 0 giveaways. It matters.
Greg, a lot has been made about the preseason rankings. You brought those up. We brought those up multiple times as this crazy season's kind of unfolded, and the way that the Big 12 basically voted backwards in some cases. What has has this been a surprise to you? What you've seen from BYU? Like, it's one thing for us out on the outside to say, like, let's put them at 15. We don't really know much about them, but for somebody who's got a front row seat, was this what you were expecting? And what element of this is maybe the most surprising, or what stands out the most for why they are where they are?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody, even in Cougar Nation, goes out and says 8 knows what they were thinking through October. But the reason I wouldn't have thought they'd be the bottom of the barrel this year was because they brought back much of a team that wasn't that far away last year. So people kind of go, BYU had a losing record last year. They can't be very good. Well, they were 5-2 at one point last year. They did have that 5-game losing streak, but to end the year. But in those 5 games, we've talked about this, should have beaten Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. If you get either of those, you're probably playing in the postseason. They got neither and did not. So they weren't that far away from a team that brought a lot of those guys back. And those guys had the memory of that 5-game losing streak to motivate them. Then they get to pick 13th, and that motivates them. Then they see Vegas says 4.5 wins over under. That motivates them. And that's what's kind of been driving this team, along with the fact that they've had exceptionally good injury luck. There have been a couple of bumps along the road. For example, you don't lose your starting center and not feel it. BYU lost Connor Pay in the Baylor game, but they've kind of picked up where they left off thanks to Bruce Mitchell, defensive lineman last year, coming in and playing both guard and center and kind of mitigating the loss of Connor Pay. So they've had a couple of hits here and there, but for the most part, the group has been the group. And it's a lot of the same group from last year that did go on the road and beat Arkansas and Fayetteville last year, that did open 3-0, that did start 5-2, that had a couple of Big 12 wins. So they weren't that far away from being good. Now, what takes you from good to great? Well, let's start with Jake Retzloff. His 4 starts last year, they were all losses, but man, he learned a lot under difficult circumstances. And now into this part, he's now started 12 games. He started essentially a season. And when a guy's had a season under his belt, he looks different. He looks better. And that's where Jake is right now. He's a true dual threat, doesn't get enough attention for his running. He finally got passed up by LJ Martin last week, by the way, for the rushing lead on the season. And by the way, the return of LJ is a massive part of this thing as well.
Oh, yeah.
But Jake is really the guy. And he quarterback position is kind of funny because a guy can be 6'4", 220 and have it all apparently, but doesn't give you the numbers. And this guy may not, be the strapping gargantuan gunslinger, but man, he's a gamer, and he's got the numbers to back it up too. He's a really good quarterback on top of that, but he carries himself in such a way that says that's the guy I want leading my team. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other, I have to turn to Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator, and say year 2 in this scheme with a great coordinator, with the players he's got back, including that big linebacker trio of Glasker, Kelly, and Taggart. That's been a massive part of this. And the secondary being as good as it's been and as impactful as it's been has allowed those front 7 and front 6 guys to really go to work.
Greg, I don't know if I've ever seen a stat line like Darius Lassiter and Chase Roberts have. They both have the same amount of receptions.
Yeah.
They both have the same exact number of touchdowns. They're only separated by Darius Lassiter's massive 7 yards longer of a reception at one point this season. How much does that really help Jake? Because, if they take away one, they're not taking away the other. They are really the same guy on either side of the field.
Yeah, Darius has had 10-plus targets more than Chase. That's the only real differentiator right now is their target to reception percentage. A few more going Darius's way haven't worked out for one way or the other. But yeah, as you mentioned, they're about basically the same guy right now, that a true dynamic duo. And that has too been a separating factor for this team. You can't really funnel everything to one guy. They've really got what you see it all the time at the next level of the NFL, but in college, you're often limited to one real superstar wide receiver, and BYU does have 2 in this instance. And I think it's meant the world to BYU, because it also frees up guys like Parker Kingston and JoJo Phillips to go to work elsewhere. And they use a lot of tight ends. They're not a heavy tight end team, but when they throw to them, they tend to score touchdowns. That's happened with Matava Tase, 4 catches, 3 for scores. It's a nice luxury to have, to know that on either side of the field, or when they line up occasionally together, you can look to either guy and expect kind of similar production. A really nice story, the Darius Lassiter, Eastern Michigan transfer coming in, and Chase Roberts has just been a reliable kid since he started as a high school product here in the state of Utah, very near to campus.
Greg, is there anything unique for the BYU side in playing at Salt Lake City?
It's been a while. The unique thing is it's been 6 years. 2018 was the last game up there. So, this is the thing. I mean, I went to school here. That 1996 game, I was the sideline reporter. I've been around this thing a long time. 2001 was my first year calling play-by-play. And at that stage of my career, it was an every year thing, home away, home away. You got used to the rhythm of the rivalry. It's been interrupted since Utah went to the Pac-12, and now it's more sporadic. And so you don't have there are guys on this BYU roster that don't know what it's like to lose to Utah, and certainly don't know what it's like to go play in Salt Lake City. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's a very new experience, which is kind of what they got practice in last year in their first year in the Big 12, is getting new venues and new feelings and new locations. For a lot of these guys, Salt Lake is just another Big 12 venue they haven't been to before because it's been so long.
Greg, the standings, you alluded to them earlier, that they did come out, and BYU was 9, and there can be an argument for that, obviously. But they would be in the top 4 if they win the conference, which they got to keep winning to do that, et cetera. What was the overall reaction among everybody that you're around today in Provo?
Well, let's say they would be 4, they'd be seeded 4th if they win the Big 12 and Boise State's not ranked ahead of BYU or wherever the Big 12. Like let's realize that's a possibility.
Yep.
Again, the rule is the byes go to the top 4 highest ranked conference champions. Now, you wouldn't think ever, right, that a Mountain West champ gets ranked ahead of a Big 12 champ. But look at the rankings last night. And it's more possible than you'd like to think. So, but let's for the moment agree that, yeah, a Big 12 champ should be no worse than the 4th best conference champ. So, yeah, a 4 seed would be the reward. So, but to get there, you can't really slip up. You would like to think you could lose a game, right? Whether it's in Arlington or otherwise, and still have a shot at that. But I thought last night's rankings really cast some doubt on that. I'm not sure if you guys agree or not, but I didn't think the separation was there that needed to be there.
Yep.
A team like BYU, a team like Boise, and having a Kansas State be 19 and Iowa State. When Iowa State popped up at 17, I thought, that's not good. They're saying the second best team in the Big 12 is number 17. And so it kind of turned out the way I thought it might, that they didn't give Big 12, the Big 12 conference, kind of the respect I think it merits. It's a competitive league. It's a week to week. You just don't know kind of league. That's not a bad thing. There's good football being played at the bottom of the league and the top of the league. So, yeah, you'd like to believe that the 4 seed is what everyone's playing for here in Arlington. But this committee last night opened some eyes and in a way that cast a lot of doubt on where this league is viewed.
I think we've kind of we looked at that where Boise was. We said, watch out.
Yeah,
there's not much room for error. Craig.
I think BYU wins out there fine. I don't know how you can, even though they're
Boise
losses
if they
to
win
Oregon.
out. If they win out, I don't think there's any question.
Yeah,
you're gonna if you win out, you're gonna be ahead of a 1-loss Boise team. But if you're comparing 1-loss teams, last night showed us that there might be more of a discussion than you'd like to think there would be. And what I don't like also is that BYU goes into number 13, right? SMU is 13th, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go into SMU and win that game. Hold them to 15 points. Have you seen their point totals this year?
Yeah.
You go into SMU, hold them to 15, and that apparently doesn't carry as much weight as Boise losing by only 3 to Oregon. Okay, we can't start valuing losses over wins, which is I think what's happening here. It's like, Boise, their only loss was to Oregon. We know how good Oregon is. BYU's undefeated. Well, that's pretty cool too. But man, that loss to Oregon shows how good Boise is. Well, no. You can't value losses over wins. What are we doing?
Yeah, and it's the first time that BYU's been a part of this. Of course, back in 2014 when it first started, there was the Baylor-TCU death match all the way down to the end, and we learned a little bit about not getting too high or too low each week because, like, they even used the eye test. That was one of the things Ward Manuel brought up, and next week it might be something different. It's just awesome that they're in the position they are. They have outperformed anything I could have imagined. Happy for Kalani Sitake and also the fan base, and I know this is a huge week, an absolutely big week, even if BYU was 5-4 or whatever they might be.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Where they are right now in the CFP just kind of adds spice to this matchup, and if BYU plays well and beats Utah, maybe there's a market correction next week with the committee when it comes to that, but I know that BYU's not worried about that. They're only worried about beating their rivals, which they haven't done frequently enough over the last couple of decades, and that's what it all comes down to Saturday night. It should be a great atmosphere, late night kick in Salt Lake City, and the most important thing for Kalani right now is beat the rival and then let things shake out next Tuesday and the Tuesday after that as we go down the stretch. But what a cool thing to have the first year of the 12-team playoff. And if you're in Cougar Nation, to have your team in the mix, be good really in the first year of the expanded playoffs. So it's a pretty fun place to be. Yeah, the complaints and quibbles notwithstanding, it's a great place to be. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I know recruiting's going well. And you mentioned one thing that I saw is that they'll talk about quality losses rather than quality wins sometimes. And next week it might be different. So enjoy it while you're in the middle of it. I know a lot of teams in the Big 12 hope that BYU keeps winning. There's a few that don't, like Iowa State, Kansas State, and maybe Colorado. But enjoy it, Greg. Thanks for your time. You do a great job.
Always my pleasure, guys. Thank you. Take care.
By the way, his Twitter feed has some of the best statistical nuggets, historical or otherwise, of a lot of the different feeds that you might go out there and find. And I really enjoy quite a bit of them. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, it's good stuff there from Greg. I understand what he's saying. Everybody's already worrying about if they lose a game, but That's a very valid point. I just, in these first set of rankings, I'm not going there yet and going, well, what happens if we lose a game? I know, and that's why I prefaced the way I said it earlier is, well, just don't lose a game. Yeah. Like, I know you'd like to have the safety net as well, but yeah, like, let's just call it what it is. You don't have that. The Big 12's not getting respect. It's very clear after last night, and you better damn sure go unbeaten, or yeah, you leave yourself open to the risk of not having a second spot, even if you are 12-1 and losing the conference championship game. Now, I also think we need to see how the next month plays out, because I think that might be a little bit too soon to call it that. We don't know who's still standing 3 weeks from now if that game starts rolling around the corner and where everybody steps up. But yeah, I mean, if you're the Big 12, you definitely feel like you're getting disrespected, but BYU controls their own destiny. So yeah, you would like to be able to say, like, well, if we lose along the way, then we'd still have a spot. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And you're going to just have to go out and win all the games that remain to ensure that you don't allow the door to get cracked open for a Boise State to leap over you. Yeah. So it's in your control, as much as you would, though, like to say, like, well, we could lose and we'll still be fine. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of teams would love to be able to have that buffer as well, but they're just not going to get that rub, and that is, not a good look for the Big 12, but the best thing they can do about it is go out and win out and not leave it up into the hands of this committee. But definitely got to be worried about any second team getting in under the undefeated BYU scenario.
None of that's breaking news either. We kind of knew that, and that's why if you ever have opportunities to beat teams that are, some of the alphas, you got to do it. Now, BYU's done what they're supposed to do, beat an SC team in Arkansas. Then also, as Greg just brought up, we've discussed the win against SMU, no matter when it was. It's interesting that, but they were, it's a win. It's against SMU. It counts. It's who they were at the time. And SMU, of course, has that they can't have any kind of mulligan themselves as they try to have a showdown event eventually with Miami. When we come back, Sylvester Stevenson, he will join us, Utah color analyst, former Utah Ute. He'll join us. And then, of course, Zeon Chriss, quarterback at Houston from Louisiana, out of Louisiana, his thoughts about the Cougars and what they're doing under Willie Fritz. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. There's an auction coming up on November the 9th, a live auction that will start at 1 o'clock on November the 9th. That is this weekend. Lunch provided. This is on their site at TexasBeefHouse.com. There's also, you can also bid online, so that's coming up. You go to TexasBeefHouse.com. In fact, I have it right here in front of me, and join their live beef auction. This is going to be loaded up with, I mentioned, Wagyu, steaks, and every type of variety of cut you like, from fillets to bone-in ribeyes to New York strip, and so much more. That's coming up on November the 9th. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com and mention 365 Sports, and you will get a percentage off your opening or your shipping and or your first order with the Duvall family at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Announcing Genco's Car Hugger Special. Right now, refinance your auto loan at Genco and get 3 months of no car payments. Plus, your loan will be automatically entered for a chance to win your next 3 car payments on us. Enjoy 5.19% for 48 months and then skip your payments until 2025. Subject to credit approval and membership eligibility. For more information, go to GencoFCU.org. Member NCUA.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
A couple of other comments in the chat room about the standings from Chriss. I think it's actually, how do you say Charrise? Charisse. I'm sorry. I always think about that movie, Clarice, with the
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, if H and L were the same thing, that'd be close.
I'm so glad Ohio State and Charisse. I'm sorry, I've asked you that before, how to say it. I am so glad that Ohio State's ranked 2 ahead of Georgia, because Ohio State beat a ranked Penn State team while Georgia struggled to beat Florida. That's one of the games that they played. Georgia does have the win on the road against Texas, which is after they have the loss against Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely one slight change from the AP, just them flipping spots. So, there's a valid reason to be excited about that and to feel like that should have been the case. But I think the main thing for me with these rankings, I know there's probably a BYU fan out there that's saying, like, no, it's a massive deal right now. Like, I'm this is probably not popular for this type of show, but I'm just let it play out guy. Like, is that being too crazy? Is it just like, I know if BYU goes 4-0 and then they lose like 5 weeks from now, like I understand why that would be problematic. But for right now, though, it's like, can you just beat Utah first and then we can worry next week about where you're situated? But I know that's not how it works. And there will be shuffling with Ohio State and Georgia. I'm sure both those teams still have big games coming up. But, you know, the first week is the first week. It sets the table, but there's a lot of football still left to be played. So even if you feel like we're already getting screwed, it's like just win and then move on and see where we are next week, and let's revisit this because it's not the end of the world yet.
It's going to, you'll drive yourself crazy. The good thing is you like to be a part of all that, and most everybody's not after the first week. Stevenson Sylvester, Utah color analyst, former Ute, joins us. Hey, man, how you been?
What's going on, my brother? How are you?
We're doing well. How has the fan base handled such a a frustrating and annoying season there?
How have we handled it? It's been extremely frustrating, right? Like, I always related to, it's like you're a parent and you know your kid can do so much more and they're just not doing it. It's like they're refusing to do it almost. And so it's been frustrating on that because, you know, we talked all offseason about the potential of Utah, right? And what they could be or what they should be doing, and the fact that they're not doing it. And, you know, us Uncle Ricos like me, I got all the answers. I know all you have to do is this. You just do this and it'll work. So internally, there's just things going on that I hope that Utah grabs a hold of, especially during this rivalry week is going to be awesome. But it's been a disappointing season for fans. I know it's been for the players. And when it's like this and it's week after week after week, it's kind of hard. Like, can I catch it? Can I grab a hold of this issue and fix it? So that's kind of where Utah's at.
What is the ideal thing you'd like to see happen at quarterback for the rest of this season? And what do you think the legitimate future plan has to be at that position? Because that has derailed the Utes the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, from my time in the NFL and my time at Utah, I just know that experience breeds the best professionals, right? If you get experience, you just know what you're doing, you get more confident, and you're able to do things a lot better. So for me, it's Isaac Wilson. If he's your quarterback of the future, whether the rest of this season is ugly, it's already ugly. Scary October happened. 4 straight losses in the month of October is gut-wrenching, right? And so that's it. But what is important is the future. And Isaac Wilson clearly needs reps. Right now there's tumultuous things happening as far as your offensive coordinator leaving in the middle of the season, all kinds of things moving. But one thing that you can do is you can get experience. So against these big game matchups, I want the future for Isaac Wilson, for him to be comfortable in any matchup, right? You're going against a top 10 football team and the guys down south. And so you know how to handle that in the future when you go against a big team time opponent. I don't want, experiences to be fresh last year. When you watch Utah, you hear these color analysts, you hear all these people, all they say is, oh, he's a freshman. All this and that, he's a freshman, you got to give him a break, yada, yada, yada. I'm tired of that excuse, right? We all put our pads on, we all study for this play. You're 18 years old or 25 years old, whatever it may be, you are out there, you better make a play. Don't let your age be an excuse forever. And so for me, I would give the reins to Isaac Wilson, enhance his confidence, teammates, coaching staff alike, just support him in every way you can, simplify the offense, make it a little easier for him so he can see what he can see and get that done. But I want to see Isaac Wilson more confident because I know he can do it.
Stevenson, after I believe it was the TCU game, is when Andy Ludwig, they made the changes, right? He stepped away. But then it was like a week later, another loss, and Micah Bernard's there in the post game, and he's talking about how they know what the problems are, but he's not going to say anything. Maybe you can't say anything, I don't know, but it just was very cryptic. Is there how did you take that, and how should everybody else take that? Is there problems in the what was that whole scenario from your standpoint?
For me, I know everybody's been asking me this week about it, right? What did he mean? And as a former player, I have no idea what he means, right? Because I know there's a bunch of different issues, right? So which one are you talking about, right? And so them internally, they know more than I would know. They know more than anybody else would know. We can only speculate. We're only privy to the information that people give us. So if he doesn't give us whatever. Basically for me, when he said that, I really didn't care because I'm just like, look, it don't matter what issues are ahead. You're out there on the football field. Me, old guy, I know that football chances, football plays, the opportunities to play this football game is limited. So that's the only excuse I need to go out there every day. So you got to give your all. So whatever it is, biggest team sport in all of sports, make it happen. Get together and be like, yo, pull your head out. Let's make this happen. So I didn't really put too much on it because that's Utah's problem these last couple of years, right? Cryptic messages. Who's playing, who's not playing, who's warming up in the warm-ups and then not playing. It's that whole bit is what's, I believe, been Utah's focus when it shouldn't be. So that's not the main thing that they should be paying attention to. That's been my issue with how we've handled situations there. So for me, when in there I get this cryptic message from the coaching staff, the players, whatever, I don't care. Look, you suit up on Saturday, go out there and hit somebody.
Stevenson Sylvester with us, former Utah football player, part of the Utah radio broadcast, as Utah and BYU. So do you have what kind of emotions for BYU?
First of all, you keep giving them a name. They don't deserve a name this week, right? They are the nameless gray faces down south, right? That's how Mike Tomlin referenced our rivals in the Baltimore Ravens, and that's how we reference those guys down south. They're the team down south this week. They don't get a name. Don't put a name on there. Don't put them up there. Hey, I'm still juiced as if I was still playing. I wish I had a helmet. You're going to see me on the sidelines on Saturday just itching on the sideline to go hit somebody. I'll probably be talking smack as if I did have pads on. So all I know is nobody better come near me because I'm going to throw some bows just like in the old days. So I'm juiced, man. This game means everything. I know you guys don't live in this community, but it's red versus blue ever since I got here in 2006. And so especially this is house divided. This is what sports is all about. You know, you name some of the biggest rivalries. This is a named rivalry. It's called the Holy War, right? Like, you know, you got Red River Rivalry, you got the Iron Bowl, you got all this is a named rivalry. So this is huge, especially here in the whole state of Utah, man. So I can't wait for it. I'm juiced. I know I got tons of coaching staff that coached me is on the staff at the guys down south. And so I know them. I'm happy for them, but not when they play us. And they know that, and so I'm good. As long as you know that I'm going to keep it 100. As soon as we play, it's on. But I wish for you guys a success outside of the game, outside of the Holy War. But for me, I got no love over there when we play this football game.
Can you give us the most intense moment or – yeah, and I know that the rivalry's been on and off a little bit, but you don't like them. You know, you respect them, but you don't like them. Is there an intense moment you remember the most playing them?
I remember all of them.
Okay.
Really, I can be honest. Every single time I can pick out a moment every single year, and I can't put one above the other. Right? In 2006, it was my first time here in Utah. I was a lonely, wrangly, skinny freshman. Playing, and it was the John Beck to Harleen play where we had the lead. We had him. Clock ran out. John Beck's running around the backfield. We only rushed 2 guys. He throws it across his body, thinking nobody's over there, and somebody pops out and they score a touchdown and win the game. Right? The very next year, we're winning again. We have them in 4th and 18 on their side of the field. Dude freaking throws a Hail Mary pretty much, and the dude's wide open in the cover too. How does that happen? 4th and 18 is called it. And then we beat them in 2008. They were doing the haka dance, and they were doing it on People's Field all year. And they wasn't about to come into Rice Eccles Stadium to do that, you know. And so I started a fight right before the game started.
No!
Yeah, that was me. I started a fight right before the game started, and that got it crump. And I just remember every single year, the whole first quarter, you can pretty much call it off. We're fighting. There's penalties. There's all kinds of stuff. That whole first quarter, until the second quarter hits, you're like, oh, crap, we got to win this football game. So every single play is trash talk. So I'm telling you, every moment was intense. And this rivalry is every bit of every rivalry that you know. It's huge. It means everything. And I cannot believe or I love that it's finally back, especially in a conference play here.
Stevenson, how much does playing at Rice Eccles, factor, do you think, into this game, if at all? And how does Utah go about winning this game in your mind when you try to predict how this could possibly fall in their favor?
It's got to be a dogfight. First off, the mentality's got to be, I'm throwing kitchen sink. I'm throwing everything. I'm throwing bows. I'm getting nasty. I'm talking smack. I'm feeling it. I'm getting confident. You know, when you're back in the high school days and you just ruining your opponent's soaking, you just put them in the dirt. That's the mentality Utah needs to have from jump. You know, we got to act like we got the lead before the game starts. And then you got to make sure that nobody can come up with that. You got to try and put 50, 60 points on the board. That needs to be the goal. Defense needs to be causing turnovers, talking smack, scoring points on defense, special teams. Everybody's got to have a nasty attitude, right? Like, I don't care. There's nothing else, right? And that's all that matters is today. And so, man, what was the other part of your question? Sorry.
Just how much does playing at Rice Eccles do you think factor into this?
Well, put it this way: the guys down south, the guys down south haven't won at Rice Eccles Stadium since 2006. So almost 20 years. So it means a lot. It's a huge, huge home field advantage. This crowd, of course, as I said, the state. So it's going to be tremendous. Utah fans are going to be scattered around the stadium trying to make sure that the guys down south fans don't flood the stadium. We don't want to see any of that blue in our stadium. It's got to be flooded with red, and so it's a huge home field advantage. As I said, they had the last time that they won was 2006 there, and we've had some epic matchups since. And so this is huge, especially for the implications that are on those guys, and they're trying to keep it perfect. They got all the worries on their side. Utah just got to go in there and, hey, protect this house, right? It's Under Armour. It's as simple as that. That's the only statement I would be saying. Ain't nobody going to come into my house and disrespect me or even pull out a win. And that's how I always felt about my home team.
I got a feeling it's a test for you on the sideline during that game for you not to want to run out in the field and play.
You have no idea. I'm looking at Coach Witt every single time, like, just give me a helmet. Come on, man. I know this defense, right? It's the same defense as it is when I played, so I know the play's coming. And from my experience, I'm watching the opponents. I know what they're doing. There's so many times in these last few years I've been on the sidelines, and I'm seeing the opponent. I'm just like, if I was in the game right now, that'd be my CFL right there. That would be my interception. I know exactly what's coming. I can make the adjustments. I can make the blitz. And so, like, I'm just itching, right? And so, one, I love the game of football. And then two, I love the University of Utah. So those two mashed together is just like the perfect harmony for me. And I wish. I'm going to be itching, man. You guys are going to see me on the field. Hopefully I don't get a sideline warning. Don't prep the refs about me coming. But I'm juiced. I'm so ready for this game. It's going to be insane.
Well, if you do get a silent warning, I'm going to point to everyone watching the game with like, hey, I know that guy. Yeah. We were just talking to him the other day. That's awesome. No, hopefully you can control yourself there. But I know it's easy to be negative with this season and to talk about the cryptic stuff and the Cam Rising injury and all the same kind of stuff that you probably talked about 1,000 times. Is there some positives that you're taking away from what you've seen so far? Are there some young guys maybe, or just some things in general stylistically? Like, where are you looking for some positivity right now, and do you find some?
I mean, the positivity for me has to be the defense, right? Aside from not causing what they now call havoc plays, which is sacks, turnovers, they have caused a lot of those. It's out, right? With the positions that they've put in from our terrible offense, they've held true, man. They've held these high-scoring offenses to 12, 13, very minimal points. We just got to score more. We got to take it upon ourselves and do that, right? If they don't score, we win is the mentality the defense needs to have. And so bright spot has been this defense. Downside of the defense hasn't been consistent on some things as dominant as they could be. They've been great, but they could be better. And so that's kind of like, man, Corrine Reed being out, you wouldn't think that one person affected so much. And so him being out those weeks were huge, especially in this month of October. It was bad. But when he came back, against, I think it was TCU's when he came back, TCU or Houston this past weekend, they made huge changes. And so last week the last game, we got Connor O'Toole back as well. So those guys are getting healthy. So expect this defense. This is going to be electric. Jake Retzlaff's going to be feeling the pressure. I'm telling you that. First, it's a rivalry game. Plus, we're getting healthier on defense. I think we're back to full strength on defense, and that should worry opponents. And so right now, defense, all they got to do is cause turnovers and get points on the defensive side of the ball, make it easier on Isaac Wilson, all those things. And but I'm telling you, this Utah defense on Saturday, watch out. They're tops in the nation in a lot of categories. And with the positions that they've been put in, it's kind of hard to believe, but they've been doing a tremendous job this year.
What has been your impression of BYU's or that team, that team in blues? What has been your impression of what you've seen from them and their undefeated start at this point? What stands out about it to you?
I'm pissed off. Pissed off because it's the exact same team as Utah. And so, if they're doing it, Utah should be doing it. That's what I'm pissed off at. It's just like the formula is there. Kalani, Jay Hill, Aaron Roderick, those are Utah guys. Kalani played for the guys down south, but he learned a lot when he came for Coach Whittingham and at the University of Utah. right? I feel like he grew up and matured and understood what he knows now, what he's translating to his team is what he learned at Utah. And so for me, this is going to be Utah versus Utah on Saturday, and who's better, who's got more heart. But the formula is there. And so that's what I'm pissed off at is that Utah's not doing it. Utah, this should be 8-0 versus 8-0 heading into this game, right? Like, Utah's lost 4 in a row, right? The most we've lost by is 6 points. Like, it's crazy. So we score 1 touchdown in all those games, and we flip the script, and it's 8-0. And so, like, so that's the crazy thing, man. But, you know, I'm very close to Jay Hill. He's a big-time Utah player when he played here. Very close to Aaron Roderick, very close to Kalani. Kalani was my linebacker coach here at Utah. So he's amazing dude. So proud of them and understanding that their maturation in their coaching careers has landed to this point, which is exactly where you want to go. And hopefully they can lead to bigger and better things afterwards. But happy for those guys because I know them so well. And just know that the technique and, as I said, the formula is there. What they're doing down there is exactly what Utah should be doing. And so I'm excited to see that, you know, what we have or what we do at Utah, it's not broken, right? It just needs to be implemented and executed. Utah's having a problem with execution, that's all.
Stevenson couldn't think we have anyone better to kind of explain the emotions of this rivalry between the two schools in Utah. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy Saturday as much as you possibly can, and just don't get an unsportsmanlike penalty for jumping into the fray on the field, and be careful.
I'll keep an eye out right there. They got somebody following me on the sideline, so hopefully they keep me all locked up.
That's Stevenson Sylvester with us from Utah Radio, former Ute, and, of course, sideline reporter for them. We got Zeon.
Yeah, we do.
All right, that's great from Utah's color analyst. How about this young man, Zeon Chriss, quarterback in Houston, and a huge win over the weekend. In fact, we just discussed that with what you guys are doing. Zeon, thanks for your time. What has it been like for you? You've given this team, Donovan Smith, a teammate too, but you've given this team kind of a spark right now.
It's been amazing. Coach asked me just to come in and give a spark to the team. Do as much as I possibly can. With my ability, I feel like I got a real good, electrifying game. So I think me adding myself to the piece, creates a great spark for this team to keep going forward, create momentum.
Zeon, I'm sure that in your life you're not too used to being a backup quarterback. How antsy do you get? And then when you did get that opportunity, how did you make sure your nerves didn't kind of overtake you? Because you stepped out there, you had a great game, but sometimes, man, you can just get too keyed up and too excited.
Yeah, a lot of times you be antsy to play. It's something I'm not used to, but it's something I had to learn how to get used to. Coach Chriss always tells us to prepare like you're the starter, no matter what your role is on the team. So week in and week out, I was just preparing and making sure I'm ready. And my dad always told me when I was younger, not too high, not too low. So when the moment came, I feel like I've been doing this for a long period of time. I've been in certain situations for me to handle these things. So I feel like my moment was called. I was ready.
What was that like when you're breaking away for the big touchdown there at the end? I'll never experience that, Zeon. I'll never know what that's like. But what is going through your mind in that moment, particularly in that instance on Saturday because of how huge a play that was?
Man, it was exciting, when I hit the hole and I just gassed through, I was just happy in my head, just thinking of all the times that, I worked hard for this moment, and for me to get my opportunity right here, right now, not take it for granted. So, it was very exciting, seeing my family happy, seeing the coaches happy, seeing, even all the quarterbacks, Donovan Smith, he was excited as well, even when I got my opportunity. But that was very exciting right there.
Your father's a high school coach, right? Is he still a high school coach?
Yeah, he still is.
Yeah, and of course, that it's something about being a coach's son, and especially at the quarterback position. Yeah. What did your father, teach you about football and life?
He taught me a lot of X's and O's. I feel like that's great. But other things that he's taught me, he used to be a football player himself, like I said, not too high, not too low. He was teaching me, a lot of things about the mental game. Like my dad was my hardest coach. Like, your parent, I think they're your hardest coach, and he's prepared me so much since I was like a young boy, just how to handle mental and be ready for like challenges. Like you got the crowds. Sometimes might be high. You got people just counting on you, and especially at the quarterback position, people can, feel like they're counting on you to do something big, and you can easily get discouraged. But in my mind, I was like, I'm ready. I've been doing this for a long time.
Zeon Chriss, the quarterback, University of Houston. What a year it's been, because, Zeon, let's be honest, there are a lot of people didn't believe in you guys at the start of the year, and you're starting to make sure people know where you are. Arizona State, also BYU. When some of those preseason polls come out, do you guys even pay attention to that?
We hear about it a lot of times. I try not to hear about it, but they talked about it. But we try to block everything out, really that's people's opinions, and at the end of the day, you don't never know what a team is really capable of, 1 week this team might be this, another week this team might be that. So we just try to stick together as one unit. Coach Chriss always preach, be a good teammate. I think, just being a good teammate will take you far.
Zeon, do you feel the build happening with this team? I mean, do you can kind of see it at kind of a grassroots. You started from scratch this year, but now the way that things have kind of played out down, that you can see the biggest differences between day one and today?
Definitely. I'm definitely seeing a big difference. When I first got here, it was a different culture, and now it's like the culture has shifted when Coach Fritz came in. The order, the structure, cheering your teammates on, instead of being, selfish. Now everybody's just sticking together. And that's what Coach Fritz really wants. He wants a program that's going to build, building a program is something he's really good at. And I could definitely see it. Coach Fritz has a, I don't quit mindset. So, in the beginning of the season, it was this, it's probably negative, but Coach Fritz, I'm not giving up on y'all. And the players just rally around that. And I think that's so great for a team, to rally around a coach like that.
What's it like, and how much better does it make you going up against that pretty salty defense you guys have every day in practice? I know they can't hit you or anything, but I'd imagine that's, iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah, it's definitely competitive each and every day. All those, but I can name so many on the defense. They, we going at it each and every day. Like it's a lot. Like if you was out there seeing you like these guys battling, but we here to make each other better. We all at the end of the day, we all great teammates. We love each other. Like before, we get the practice started, we all high fiving each other, saying, let's go, make me better today. I'm talking to the DBs. I'm like, make me better today, and the DBs come on, Zeon, let's go. So it's like that competitive nature.
And does that give you an extra boost of confidence as well when the offense maybe doesn't, have a successful drive, that that you've got a really good defense that's going to give you guys opportunities, much like they did last week, right?
Yeah, definitely. Defense, after we might come off 3 and out, and the defense come over there, they might say, yeah, we got y'all, just keep going. And, they give us a confidence boost. Like, I'm confident, our defense going to handle their job, and, the defense believe in us as well. So, I think just, with being a great teammate is, I was actually talking to my teammate today, just whenever another player mess up, another player, make up for their mess up, and vice versa. So I think that just being a good teammate,
You won a state championship in basketball, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you also a state champion in track and field?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do in track and field? Because it's always, to me, one of the most unique, events in track and field.
Yeah, I've been running track my whole life, but it was a multiple events I did. I did like the 4x1, 4x2, the 400. I did as well, long jump, and I also did javelin. For the first time, yeah.
How long did it take you to kind of get that? That's a timing thing, no different than a triple jump or a long jump or even a relay. But that's one that's not. It's probably easier said than done.
Yeah, javelin. I did a lot of other events my whole life, but javelin, I did that for the first time. We had needed more points, I think, on the team, and I had like 2 weeks to prepare for district, and went out there and won district. I think I came second in the region, and then went to state and just won first. Like that I surprised myself with that.
Have you thrown an incompletion since last week, even in practice? I mean, that was pretty cool to see you. And then I know Manjack had the one as well, the perfect day. But, yeah, what was that kind of like?
I didn't even know I went 11 for 11. A lot of times I just be out there just balling, just playing, play the next play. And after the game, somebody said, "You went 100% 11 for 11." I was like, "What? Huh?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was exciting, you know.
All right, so I was told, Bertie told me that you were having steak last night and that your coach, who we know well, Sean Bell, he didn't cook it long enough. Is that right? What was what?
We did have steak last night. I didn't think y'all know that, but yeah, I like my steak kind of well done. You know, it had a lot of pink in there, and coach is like, let me just throw this on there a little bit longer for you. Yeah, but it was pretty good though. The steak was pretty good. He surprised me.
What's your favorite meal? You're from Louisiana. Is it going to be gumbo or jambalaya or something, a crawfish? What?
Yeah, some Cajun food. I love gumbo. I just got done eating gumbo like 30 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, I was also told that you're very, very, very deep into your faith, very spiritual,
Yeah.
Quiet, but you're always discussing or working that into your life as well. Has that been that way from day one with you, with your parents and family?
Yeah, I've been, in the faith. I grew up in church a long time, but then, I began to have a real relationship with God, in high school and in college as well, kind of matured me and everything like that. But, my faith is carried me a long way. It gave me a great maturity, gave me a peace. I was able to handle a lot of storms and battles that came my way. And just having a real relationship with Christ really changed my life for real. And, Jesus Christ did a lot for me my whole life.
How much did it help you during the last year when you broke your leg?
It helped a lot. I'm not gonna lie. When I got hurt, like on the field, I smiled in my head because I know, without testimony, you can't have a story. So I'm like, one day somebody's gonna hear my story about how I got hurt, and I just smiled on the field because the Bible says it's count it all joy when you go through diverse temptation. And I knew I was gonna bounce back and come back, stronger than ever, faster than ever. So that was something big in my faith right there.
You were at University of Louisiana, and then you go to Houston as a transfer with Willie Fritz, the head coach. When you decided to talk to Houston, he was there, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But did you ever ask him, why the heck didn't you recruit me when I was out of high school? Or did he?
He actually did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a relationship or knew him anyway?
Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah, that always makes a difference. Hey, man, it's been a fun story, and I'm not just saying it's fun and cute. You guys are playing good football, coming off a huge win. Good luck the rest of the way, and thanks a lot for your time, Zeon. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Zeon Chriss, the quarterback at the University of Houston, and they have been quite the story, too, along with a handful of teams inside the Big 12. Before it's all said and done, with still 4 games to play, God knows what this conference in the standings will look like.
Yeah, he's been a really nice bright spot for them. The defense leads the way, but they're making enough plays offensively, like his big run that I asked him about there towards the end of that game, that it's, adding a nice little balance. And you'd obviously like to have more, but he's given them that spark that we talked about at the beginning of that interview. And then yet still, what's great about it is that Donovan Smith still has his place too, in certain situations. So it's not as though it's still a group effort in a lot of ways, but he's risen as the guy at QB1 now, and very dynamic, exciting player. That was really neat to see him go 11 for 11, and then they actually went 12 for 12 because Joseph Manjack also threw a pass, which Zeon caught. Damn it, I should have asked about that.
Yeah.
Damn it. He caught a pass, ran, and also threw, was 11 for 11. So I can't believe I blanked on that.
So he didn't even have an incompletion as a receiver either.
No.
He caught
man, I'm so mad about that now.
That's okay. We'll have him on down the road.
Yeah, I hope I remember it. I can't remember even what I did yesterday, so I hope I can remember to ask him that. But he's been a great bright spot, and they're getting just enough balance to stay in the thick of games. And I said this about them in my – people do power rankings. I do mojo rankings, which are a little slightly different, kind of similar concept, but slightly different. And, they've had some good confidence-building moments, and they stay in the thick of games. And as I've said in my Mojo rankings, they're not a team you want to get into a fight with. Like, you don't want to beat them in the alleyway after closing time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they are scrappers, and they will fight you, and they will play great defense, and then they will bust a big run, and then you're flailing because now you got to go try and score against this really good defense. So they're not going to blow you out, is my point, or like really finesse you. But they will win a close fight, as you've seen multiple Big 12s now learn that, multiple Big 12 teams now learn that lesson, and Oklahoma nearly learned that lesson as well. So you got to be very wary of them. And I think at this point we've all realized that those preseason expectations, much like with BYU or Arizona State, or even the ones that went the opposite way, like Oklahoma State and Kansas, Houston was one of those as well, that they were almost unanimously pegged at the bottom, and they're going to find themselves like right there in the middle. They might go to a damn bowl game.
Well, I know. They play at Arizona. They play Baylor, who they beat last year, and then they play at BYU. And imagine what that might be like. But the one game they got popped was against Kansas on the road. They got blown out 42-14. Other than that, even Iowa State 20-0. They lost to Cincinnati 34-0. So they were kind of flailing. But the win against TCU woke me up. And then, of course, almost beating Oklahoma, and had a chance really to do that. But they're now on a run. They've won a couple in a row with a chance to get to a bowl game, as you mentioned.
Cincinnati and Iowa State did what you're supposed to. They smashed the throttle on them and didn't allow it to be a close game. You allow it to be a close game, that's not a position you want to be in with Houston at the end of a ball game.
No, especially if you have to drive against them, as you mentioned. If you're down 3-6, whatever it might be. Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network, will join us on many things, college football, and even a note or two about the NFL. David Smoak with Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, up to $10,990 off MSRP when it comes to the 2024 Jeep Gladiator Mojave. 22-gallon fuel tank, 4,500 pounds of towing capacity, 5-passenger seating, removable doors, dual-zone front air conditioner, removable 3-piece hardtop, 8 speakers, Fox shock, and much more. And my goodness, it's a beautiful car and available. Again, $10,990 off MSRP. The 2024 Chrysler Pacifica Touring L, up to 28 miles per gallon, 7-passenger seating. That's a big, nice place to have plenty of people. The big family, kids, whatever. Power lift gate, sliding doors, remote control start, rain detecting windshield wipers, 10 cup holders, and so much more, including $8,200 off MSRP. And the 2024 Jeep Wrangler 4xe Rubicon right now with $12,000 off MSRP. Ted Teague, David Gray, the general sales manager, Ted Teague, the general manager and CEO, Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco, Loop 340 and east of 84.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Bracket Cat, this man, as we were interviewing Zeon Chriss, the quarterback at Houston, was the instrument of our destruction as a K-State fan. You're right. We're joined by our good friend Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network and national talk show, and with us on Wednesdays. And Zach, thank you, man. Hey, I saw a video on your Twitter feed. Where were you having dinner? Where they were? Was that like a fillet or something that you were having for dinner?
Yeah, there was a lot of steak last night. I got invited to this dinner, and it was this place called Reserve Cut right around my apartment. And they put 2 steaks on the table, and then they put one in the pan, and they just started cooking the entire thing. It was pretty cool. A lot of fire everywhere.
It looked delicious, no doubt about it, and glad you had a nice meal. So what were your takeaways, 1, 2, or maybe 3 of them, about the release of the first college football standings?
Yeah, so I was not in favor of going to 12 teams. I thought it was too big of a jump. Outside of last year, I didn't really think there was a year where we thought, okay, we needed more than 4 teams in the college football playoff. So I would have liked to have seen, it go to maybe 6 or 8. But when you get to actually see the bracket last night, I'm like, man, these first round matchups are unbelievable, and I'm absolutely hooked. The other takeaway that I have, and I had this opinion for a while, I think if you win your conference championship, you don't need to be guaranteed a bye. I just think you should be guaranteed a spot into the college football playoff. And what does it for me, and I get it right, perceived to be right, the Big Ten and the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, you would think would be better than the Group of 5 winner that gets in. But to just have that team be at 12, and then to have the conference champions the other conference champs get a bye into the top 4 spots, I would just say, if you win your conference championship, you get in, but you're not guaranteed to get a bye.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're going to make tweaks to it, and I bet you it'll be at 16 before we pass go. I mean, we're not going to have that much longer on it. But Zach, Alabama, Penn State in particular stick out to me as teams that have been given a pass on their inclusion in this, at least with Penn State, how high they are compared to other teams. Do you think that's historical bias? Why would they be over, a BYU or an Iowa State or someone like that?
Brand recognition. And I'm not saying that's the right thing, but that's what the committee has done in the past. Like, hey, one of my producers was saying Miami, should they really be as high as they are? To get there undefeated, but who the heck have they beaten? They've almost lost some games. So I would say why Alabama is still in is because they beat Georgia. And Georgia, right, was in the top 4 teams. So that they were going to find a way to keep them in. And if they suffer another loss, they will be out. And sure, Penn State, they beat West Virginia when we thought West Virginia was going to be good before the start of the season. They almost lost to Bowling Green shortly after that. And their biggest test of the season, they lose to Ohio State. And even though it didn't feel like they were in the game, but obviously they were because they had the ball right on the goal line at the end. But Ohio State was clearly the better team. We know how highly ranked Ohio State is in at the number 2 spot. So I'm assuming because of the losses and where the losses were, even though some of those teams you mentioned don't have a loss like BYU, and we know Iowa State just lost this past weekend, maybe it's because they have better losses and closer losses and the brand recognition is why the rankings are where they are.
Zach, Penn State's another one of those teams that's really bandied about after last night, their positioning. But I'd like your thoughts on the whole James Franklin and big game, inability to kind of climb that mountain. What are your thoughts on his struggles in beating the best teams?
It's why I call them Participation State University. Like, that's what he's turned them into. He's done a really good job there. But if the goal is to just show up every year and you win the games that you're supposed to win, and then when you go up against the big dogs in years past, Michigan, I know Michigan's down this year, and Ohio State, it's crazy. And here's the thing. He doesn't call the defensive plays. He doesn't call the offensive plays. He doesn't recruit the best talent in the world because they don't have a wide receiver really on that team. But with the new offensive coordinator coming in, I was told everything was going to be different. And early on in the season against West Virginia, it looked like that. But to be on the 3-yard line and you don't run a direct snap to your best offensive player and Warren just having bulldozed through, I don't get that. And they had a pick 6, and in the big spot, right, this offense, they only had 2 field goals. And then afterwards, this is why I really can't stand James Franklin, if you can't tell. It's one thing to lose, but then when you lose, I'm not saying you have to show class, but don't act like an ass. And this guy constantly acts like an ass, and he always blames something to try to take away from the loss. Like a few years ago against Ohio State, we're not an elite program because the kids didn't sit in the first row of class. Like, I just heard Jamar Chase say he didn't really take classes or study for classes for tests when he was in college. We know what Cardell Jones said all those years ago. Yeah. And then after the game, he's getting into it with the fan, and he rings a victory bell when they didn't win the game. And then he's like, 99.9% of the other programs would love to be in the spot that we're in. There's always just some lame excuse, or he just acts like a clown when he loses. And this is a guy, when I was at Temple, when Matt and PJ Walker were kicking his teeth in, he stopped the game to check the PSI level of the football. Like that's how lame this dude is. And I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. All those things that I just said were true.
Do you feel like that the 12-team playoff has taken away from the regular season, or does it make it more interesting?
Before the year, I would have said yes. I'm not going to lie. I haven't felt like this regular season is meaningless this year. I think this is as good as a regular season as we've seen in quite some time. And I think it helps that a lot of these big schools did go down early in the season. So there's not as much, wiggle room left. But maybe if those losses didn't happen, okay, you could afford a loss at the end of the season. But still, look at what happened this past weekend, right? Everyone's talking about A&M this, A&M that, how great A&M is, and how they're on the verge of making the college football playoff. And then they lose where they score, allow South Carolina to score 24 points in the second half and beat them by 24 points. And now it's like A&M is on the outside looking in, and they still got a chance to make the playoff if they win out. So I don't think, even though I thought it would, I don't believe the regular season has been taken away. I'll be curious, though, at the end of the season, when you have some of those rivalry games and they meet up again in the conference championship game, if you beat a team once, can you beat a team twice, in back-to-back weeks? That's something that stands out. But for the most part, I don't think I've seen a big difference in a negative way.
Ole Miss and Georgia this weekend's the best game. Does Carson Beck shake it off finally?
I'm not going to say right now that Georgia's losing this game. And I know it was one performance by Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has been up and down. And, hey, Lane Kiffin can't win a big game either. But when you look at Ole Miss, we know they could score. I still think Georgia's one of 3 teams right now that I feel good about winning a national championship. But I've been on this train for a while. I just have not been impressed by the quarterback. Too many turnovers. And I was told this guy was supposed to be the number 1 pick of the draft. He was going to win the Heisman Trophy, right? I was believing all that stuff. And when I watch football this year, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward have been the quarterbacks that are eligible for the draft next year, the 2 quarterbacks that impressed me the most. Milrow's been too up and down, bad awareness. I don't think Gabriel is going to be a top 15 pick. Quinn Ewers, I think, is more of a college quarterback than a pro quarterback, but I've been so disappointed with Carson Beck. It's wild. He could go on and win a national championship this year, and even though I wouldn't be disappointed, I could still be a slightly disappointed in terms of, I'm not talking about the team, but with him individually, because I thought for sure he would have been a top 10 pick this season. With what I've seen so far, I would not be picking him in the top 10.
Zach, you brought up the Heisman there briefly. How does Ashton Jeanty fit into your bigger picture? How do you view his, the competition that he plays, playing on the West Coast? Not everybody gets to see him. Just what's your your pecking order of guys that end up in New York, and how does he fit into that puzzle?
Yeah, so I think he has a very good chance, in my opinion, to win the award. I look at it, as long as they win their conference and they are in the college football playoff, he'll definitely be a finalist. And, I'm seriously considering him on my ballot right now for the number 1 spot. You get 3 votes if you vote for the Heisman. I think right now 4 guys could win the Heisman. Jeanty, obviously, Travis Hunter, obviously, and then Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel. If I had to vote today, I would probably say Jeanty is 1, Ward is 2, and Hunter is 3. And it goes to the most outstanding player in the country. but I do think the team success is ultimately going to dictate who wins this award. Like if Cam Ward, as great as he is, and I know it hasn't always been this case, but that's how I think it's shaping up this year. If Miami goes down and they don't win the ACC and they're not in the playoff, I think he loses the Heisman then. You know, if Boise State somehow finds a way to lose in their next few games, I think Genty's out of it. And the same, obviously, you know, you look at Travis Hunter, I think he's a finalist either way. What he does, no one does in the country. And now Colorado has a chance to get to a Big 12 championship game and win the Big 12 championship game. So I do believe that those will be the 4 finalists. You know, if you want to throw a 5th, I guess you could throw Shedeur in there, but I would say those would be the 4 finalists right now.
Yeah, it's tight though. I don't think, you know, there's a little separation, but that's why they have games to play, right? We got to watch the rest of the month of November.
Like when Caleb Williams won it 2 years ago, you knew he was going to win it. When Jaden Daniels going into last year, you knew he was going to win it. When we go into now the final few weeks of the season, I think, like I said, there's 4 guys there, but I don't think anyone could tell you who will definitely win it. You know, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would say Cam Ward, just because most of the time, you know this, I'm not saying who I would vote, but most of the times it usually is a quarterback award these days.
Zach, I saw a note from you. Paul, you have a question for me? Go ahead.
I do. You mentioned how much you disliked Franklin and Day last week. Do you have a list of coaches that fall in this category? Like, who else is on the list?
That's a good question. You know what? I wouldn't put this guy on the list before the start of the season, but I think Mike Gundy is trending.
I was wondering
on that list, just with what he said about
on your list. I know, right? Dabo's on the list.
Dabo is definitely on the list. And you know what? Let me tell you, I felt so bad for Dabo Sweeney. Everyone jumping back in, and then he gets smacked by Jeff Brom and Louisville. But Gundy I used to love because, right, you know, the whole I'm a man, I'm a 40, it was fun. But what he said about the fans the other day, I didn't love. And then before the start of the season, he was just a complete ass when talking about Ollie Gordon and what happened with Ollie.
You had a tweet about Dak Prescott and the fact that some thought or think that he quit on the team. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, so I saw the headline. James Jones, who I like, you know, he does a good job. He was on his show on Fox. I believe it's called The Facility on FS1. And he said he thinks Dak is quitting on the team. And I'm critical of Dak. I've said for a while, Dak's not going to win you a Super Bowl. You probably never get to an NFC championship game with Dak. He's a good but not a great quarterback. Good quarterbacks get paid great money. But whenever I watch Dak Prescott, I don't think they lose because he's quitting and just because he has a hamstring injury. And Jerry Jones goes on 105.3 The Fan and says he expects him to go on IR, and he still hasn't been on IR yet. I think people see that and they're like, oh, 4 weeks for a hamstring, he's quitting on the team. I just don't think it's fair to Dak. Like, there are a lot of things that get said about Dak Prescott that are fair. To accuse him of quitting on the team, I thought was unfair for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, that's kind of crossing a line. You better know if you say that.
Yeah. Zach, I'll tell you this. I don't think Dak's going to play another snap for them this year. I think they'll make – and I don't think it's because he's quitting. I just think there's going to be no benefit in having them potentially get hurt for a team that, you know, might get another win or two the rest of the year. They're bad. They're really, really bad. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, Dak's never going to win you a Super Bowl or get you to an NFC championship game if you don't maximize everything around him, which they clearly haven't done. Like, you can get to an NFC championship and a Super Bowl with a quarterback like Dak if you build around him, but they don't do that. They're not even close.
So here's the mistake that they made, and now I'm going to sound hypocritical here. If you were going to pay Dak, which they did, they should have paid him before the start of free agency so they could spread out the money, and then they could actually be all in. But once they did not pay him going into free agency, I would not have paid Dak. I would not have paid Tua. I was outspoken on that. And I would not have paid Trevor Lawrence. And you look at it right now, all those guys got paid. Trevor Lawrence isn't playing well. Tua got hurt. I know he's back. And they've lost 2 since he's been back. And Dak Prescott is hurt. And they're on the verge of, obviously, they're going to miss the playoffs. So teams rush to pay their quarterbacks. And I feel like once one domino falls, all the other ones fall. But all 3 of those teams right now are not going to be making the postseason. And all 3 of those teams overpaid their quarterbacks.
Zach, great stuff, man. Thank you very much. You made me hungry when I saw that video of the steak that was being cooked right in front of you. Glad you had a great dinner, and thank you, as always, for your time with us on Wednesdays. We love the show, Infinity Sports Network. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Smokey. With the barbecue you guys have, I'm sure you can make me like salivate over food.
Yeah,
too,
no, I'm throwing up a video by the end of the week, so get ready for that. And I'll tag you in it too.
Just don't have the brisket look like Lincoln Riley's from a few years ago. That was dry. Later, guys.
Thank you.
That was the beginning of the end for him.
Yep,
that was it.
He's never been the same, neither of his teams. Thank you. That's Zach Gelb with us.
How can you respect a guy if you're going to go play for him when he thinks that looks good?
Yeah, that was I thought initially and Gary Barnett is next, former Colorado and Northwestern coach, I thought he had just cut it wrong. Then I started, no, God, Lincoln, no. All right, when we come back, hope you've enjoyed the show so far. We're not done. Thanks to those of you in the chat that mentioned the interview and welcoming the interview with Zeon Chriss if you're a Houston fan. And now Gary Barnett on Colorado and their game at Texas Tech in Lubbock. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for all of your automotive needs, whether it's looking to get into a brand new vehicle, looking to get into a pre-owned vehicle, looking to just get your vehicle worked on. They can make all of those things happen over at Richard Carr. And right now they've got savings carrying over from the Halloween time that remain terrifying in the best kind of way. The scary savings events now turn the page into the month of November, but they've still got all the great deals and all of the great makes and models and options for you out there on the lot. So take advantage of the pricing, take advantage of the great customer service, and take advantage of all the options. And right now you can save $8,000 or more, for example, on an all-new 2024 GMC Sierra SLT truck in stock. Sierras and the four-wheel drive versions have even bigger savings. You can find some Sierra trucks on the lot right now under $40,000, and it's no secret that the GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road with a multi-pro tailgate, first-class interior, and power to spare. The GMC Sierra is the truck for Texans who want to drive the best. So again, right now you can save $8,000 or more on all GMC Sierra SLT trucks in stock, the 2024 models. They've also got a lot of value and confidence when it comes to their pre-owned offerings, whether that's cars and trucks, SUVs. Richard Carr's lot is loaded with over 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks priced to move. And remember, their goal is always 100% credit approval. So whether you're looking to buy new, like the GMC Sierra, which you can check out more information on over on the website or there in person, or you're looking to go pre-owned, they've got again, 100 vehicles out there for you to choose from and to get great pricing on as well. So treat yourself with a new car or truck and find those big savings over at Richard Carr right now off Highway 6 at the Imperial Exit and at richardcarr.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Is your car ready for a makeover? Get ready to fall in love with your ride again at City Tire and Battery. City Tire and Battery is family owned and has provided expert service with top quality products since 1942. And with financing available, there's no reason to put off those much needed upgrades. Give your car the love it deserves and go see City Tire and Battery, located at 1502 South Valley Mills in Waco.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Big noon kickoff will be in Lubbock this weekend on Saturday. The game, Texas Tech and Colorado, will also, of course, be on Fox, and we're joined by Colorado color analyst, former Colorado Northwestern head football coach Gary Barnett, who's been on the show with us in the past. Gary, thanks for your time, Coach. This is a Colorado team that seems like they have, since some early season questions and getting beat up once or twice, they really seem like they've found their rhythm. Why?
Well, I think two things. One is defense has been playing really well. They playing lights out in the second half, especially. We went through 4 games and no one scored on us in the third quarter. I think we're averaging like 6.5 points in the second half. So that's one thing, is that we come out at halftime and we've made the kind of adjustments that you would hope a defense would be able to make. And then we've played to those adjustments. And then secondly is we protected our quarterback a little bit better. We found a little bit of a running game. Now, we're not Army or Navy, but we can at least get close to 100 yards. And, that's a big change for us. And, we've got a couple guys back healthy. And, really since the loss, the tough loss to Kansas State, which we did not deserve to win, but almost did win, we've played pretty well. So it's a combination. I think offensive line growing together. None of these guys have ever played together before the first snap of this season. So that's helping a lot. But I think mostly is our defense.
The defense was it not just a scheme thing? Did that Nebraska game maybe change or inject into them what their attitude had to be?
Well, we came out and we weren't ready to play that game. We weren't ready for that crowd, and they got overwhelmed. And then we made 2 really crucial mistakes in the game that were a little bit weird. One, we threw an out route from our own 2-yard line and got picked off and walked into the end zone. And then secondly, we intercepted a ball, fumbled it into the hands of a receiver, and he went ahead and scored on it. So we gave 14 points just like that. In the second half, we won the second half 10-0 and played pretty doggone well. We didn't move the ball great, but we played great defense. And so really since that point, we just weren't ready to play that first half. And it really looked like we got beat up pretty bad because it was 28-0 at the end of the first half, and everybody turned us off. But in the second half, we sort of controlled the whole game, but there wasn't enough offense for us at that point in time to win it. So we got to break at Baylor. I mean, we did some good things at Baylor, hung in and found a way to win that. And I think this team has just sort of found its traction a little bit. It's sort of found what it really wants to do. But I do think, I'll go back and say it again, I think the fact that we have a great deal of confidence in our defense that we're going to get the ball back. And I think going into last week, we were 18th in the country in getting stops. And a year ago, we were probably 98th in the country getting stops. And that's a big number. And that's that's really an important stat. That's something that coaches look at all the time is what's your stop factor on defense. And if, the last year, the top 25 teams in the country, all average and stop factor, all average 9.6 victories for the season. So it tells you how important it can be and how it can subtly lead to having a good season and a good team.
Coach, I'm by no means fast-forwarding past this week, but because of what they've done to this point, there is a lot out there for the taking still. I mean, there's 4, now 5 games with the bowl game, but let's start with that bowl game. How big of a deal was that to get that 6th win here in year number 2 for Dion? Just what that kind of feel like amongst the fan base and the folks that cover the program to know that they accomplished that and still with a plenty of breathing room left?
Well, Dion's beating everybody up about it. That's not a bowl game's that's just a step, but that's not what we're after. And so I think the fan base has sort of bought into that we can do better. We're going to get more. We got a chance to get more. And really, when you look at it, it's in our own hands. We control our own destiny, which a week ago we couldn't do. And a week ago we needed a whole bunch of things to happen. Well, most of those things have happened, and now it's there for them, but you got to go play the game, and playing in Lubbock, as you know, is a difficult thing to do. I doubt if any of these kids have ever played in Lubbock. So it's, that's a big test. And I think the fan base has bought into one game at a time and see what happens. But I think there's a relief that we got to a bowl game. And because it's been since 2016. And then before that, it was 2005 that we were in bowl games. So we haven't exactly been tearing up that bowl schedule.
Yeah, and you're right to also point out, the Big 12 odds as well have greatly increased as a result as well. So, plenty to play out there for. But you also brought up playing in Lubbock. You did that in 1999. Texas Tech won 31-10 in that game. And then I believe a second time, 2003, right? Texas Tech against Mike Leach, 26-21. What's it like playing in Lubbock, Texas, and how difficult can it be?
Well, I put it this way: I'd rather play them in Boulder. But,
right.
You didn't talk about our schedule in Boulder, but I think we beat them every time we had them in Boulder.
You did.
And that game in 2003, I think we had 6 interceptions in that game. We had a great game plan, but we, wasn't enough. So it's tough. It really is. It's all football, and it's not a place that everybody goes very often, and so they're not real comfortable there. And and the funny thing is, it's the closest Big 12 opponent for us, and you would think Kansas or Kansas State would be, but it's actually Lubbock, Texas, and Salt Lake City maybe a hair closer, but those are the two closest. So no, it's a tough environment, and it's just like a road game should be. And these guys, they played at Nebraska. Let me tell you what, there isn't going to be a much harder place to play than Nebraska was this year. Of course, we didn't do very well, but we learned something from it. And I think that they'll be able to take that knowledge that they learned there and that experience and hopefully apply it to Lubbock.
So before we move on, I do want to mention in 2002, they did beat Mike Leach and the Red Raiders 37-13 in Boulder. So there you go, Coach. Those are the 3 meetings during your stretch there.
Yeah, I know. Somebody just sent me that video, by the way, so that's how I knew.
They have a running back in Tech, at Tech, and Taj Brooks, who looks like he's like, I don't know, trying to tackle an armadillo or a wolverine, one of the two. Your thoughts? You love to run the football, man. You guys could pound the rock. Your thoughts about what you see in Taj Brooks?
He's a beast, and I just watched him last week as they played Iowa State, and really, he's just a game changer, and nobody has anybody like him really. I mean, the kid at Kansas State's pretty close, but he's a different kind of runner. But Brooks is just a beast, and so it's we've been pretty good against the run, and we've been very good on defense. So it's going to be a great challenge for CU to figure out how to do this. We're pretty much a man cover team, and we've got fewer exotic blitzes, but we got to hold up in the run game against him. And you look at the numbers that the receiver has and your quarterback. I mean, they're the same numbers that our two guys have, with Shadur and Travis. They're almost the same numbers. I think the kid at Tech's got 60 catches or something. So, it's going to be a lot like two of the same teams playing each other, I think.
Let me ask you this, if you don't mind, as far as Colorado and what Dion has done. Last year, there was so much explosion because of the early win against TCU. Then they beat Nebraska. And, I mean, every game, and they still have games that are nationally on national television. They're on all the time, and now they have this game in Lubbock, and there's a reason. Tech has earned it, but so with Colorado being there. What do you think? What have you seen from Dion as a head coach from this year compared to maybe his first year at Colorado?
You know, I think I just see him more involved, more. You know, I think he's a better coach this year than he was last year. You know, for example, the last game we played, we had 4th and 2 or 3, 4 different times, and a year ago he would have gone for it on all of them. And this year he's just coaching smarter football. Last week when we had those situations, we punted each one. 2 of them turned into scores for us. So I think he's just, you know, he's around this level another year, and he's a bright enough guy to where it didn't take him long to catch on. And I just think he's so much more aware of what he has to do as a coach to coach at this level and to win at this level than he was a year ago.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time, man. Always appreciate your insight and what you bring to the table. It's great to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great being with you.
Thank you. That's Gary Barnett, former Colorado, and then also Northwestern with what he did there, football coach and a part of the Colorado radio broadcast team. I think he's right about Dion. He's a hell of a more – it does seem like on the sideline he's much more involved. There are times he's just listening, watching. But I do think he does appear to be much more engaged with certain parts of the game. Maybe even a little tiny stuff that maybe not that I watched him on the sidelines all of last year.
Yeah, you know, look, I don't know why people complain about how like, if it's working, don't mess with it. It's working. Whatever he's doing, involved, super involved, not involved, like, you know, Bobby Bowden won a national championship and had the headset in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
He would like pick it up. So there's no one way to do it, right? There's no, like, it's not the, you know, Bear Bryant did it this way, so I have to do it this way, or whatever works for you. And letting his coordinators coordinate I think it's a good thing, because I think nowadays most coaches who call something wind up not maybe being able to do their full job. I think you've got to let your coordinators coordinate, and if you can be the guy who is over all of it and say, no, this is not what we're going to do, who can get the team focused, then that's what you have to do. Now, look, it's worked here for Dave Aranda calling that defense. I don't think that's going to be forever. I think he's going to, you know, eventually get it to where Matt Pallage knows it, or, you know, whatever, and have a guy who calls his defense. I think that's going to happen here. But I think long-term that those things don't work. And if he's not calling plays, so what? It's working. They're winning almost every week now. And when they lose, you know, outside of the Nebraska game, it's a thriller against Kansas State. This is not a team that's getting their ass handed to him anymore. So whatever he's doing is working, and he just has to continue to adapt as it goes on.
Yeah, this is Tech coming off a massive win after those back-to-back losses at home, and Colorado coming in on a heater with what they're doing too, even though they did lose that game against Kansas State. Gary Barnett even saying it. They shouldn't have beaten Kansas State, but they almost did. So that's always something that can make a difference. We're going to do the Big 12 pod, which for this particular show is the Big 12 North. Now, we'll have the South left. Paul, you're out Friday.
Yeah.
Craig is out Friday. I'm going solo Friday. Do you want us to do the South Friday? Because I'll do the South Friday.
Look, whatever you want to do. It's your show. I mean,
I've never heard
again,
that before.
I am, you know, I do whatever I want to do, and you guys aren't here on Fridays. And so you should do that.
That's what I'm afraid of. I learned. There's a lot of things.
Listen,
you know.
Look. So I don't think that's bad.
No, I mean you do your thing, whatever Amanda tells you to do. And she runs the show on Thursday or Friday. So we have a high school game tomorrow, so we'll be on sometime. I'll be on Friday, And then Paul and Craig are leaving me for one of the days. Garrett, you will be here with me, having my back. Thank you very much. Here's a note from Pete Thamel real quickly before we get to the pod. Big 12 Board Chairman, Baylor President Linda Livingstone sent a letter to college presidents and chancellors calling for an urgent need for the presidents and chancellors from the 4 major conferences to gather in person to discuss sometime in early December models for the future of college football specifically and college athletics overall. But you know what? This doesn't matter if they don't have the Big Ten and the SEC there, and I'm not so sure they'll show up. But Dr.
Did you
Livingstone,
read the rest of the response?
Yeah.
They're saying there's no interest.
That's
shown
why
no
I brought
interest.
up the story.
Big Ten and SEC have already. It's already out there. They've shown no interest in going to meet as she's asking and suggesting them to do.
No, that's that was you're right. But she, of course, the president at Baylor Board of Governors, and also has been a part of that the NCAA group as well that's trying to change things up. So there's that. All right, now let's get to the Big 12 North Pod. These are the teams in order. We had Iowa State stub their toe. Kansas State did that too. But let's start with who's on the top of all that group. It's Iowa State, 7-1, still ranked in the top 20 at 17. Go.
Yeah, look, they just lost by 1 point at home. That's not the worst way to lose. But I'm not going to dog on them too much for that. Like they were Iowa State. I mean, they looked like themselves. They weren't the best version, but Texas Tech was kind of locked in and ready to go and went on and won the game down the stretch. So I'm not worried about them, until Farmageddon. I think that's the prize they have to keep their eye on. But I do kind of pity the next couple teams on their schedule, because I think these guys are on a mission, and they got knocked off the road a little bit.
Yeah, they had already been showing some cracks in the armor. I mean, a couple games prior to that, they were showing some weaknesses and not playing their best level of ball. I think that was an absolutely just miserable loss, given the big picture stakes of it. I don't think anybody in Ames, Iowa anticipated that loss. I don't think, the style of it or any amount of what led to the loss. I just think a loss in general, that wasn't in the cards. And so to get all the way to being where you were at 7-0 and in control of your own destiny, and to let it slip through your fingertips at home is a really tough pill to swallow. But you nearly had that happen with UCF 2 weeks prior to that. To have that performance coming off a bye week was also shocking. So they've got to play better. They need to be able to do more offensively. They got to play cleaner. And I think, there's still a lot to like about this team, but I'll say it. That's so Iowa State to go and then lose that game. That's the difference in being Oklahoma or a blue blood and being the teams that, their best is this big bowl game that they went to. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You can't lose that game if you want to take that next step up. Now, they can still take a step up, finish out 11-1, go win the Big 12, and that would be a massive step up for that program. That's all still in the cards, but just you had a goal and opportunity with all of the control in your grasp, and you let that slip through at home unexpectedly. So that's just a tough pill to swallow. I think this weekend against Kansas ought to be very interesting if they play better. I think you really love their chances, but I think Kansas is also a very dangerous team, and they've had a lot of very close losses this season. So Iowa State needs to play better than what we saw a week ago. And that Tech game did come down to the wire, and Taj Brooks does score late, so it wasn't as though you got your doors blown off, but again, it was somewhat shocking. So I'd expect a nice bounce back for Matt Campbell and company, and they know that they can ill afford to now really let go of the remaining control that they do have.
Iowa State, Texas Tech, among others, have had some good years. But there's a reason why it's been a long, long time since they had an outright conference title. And for Iowa State, it was 1911 and 1912. They had that chance to put themselves in a position they could still win the conference title by winning it outright, by getting to the game and winning in Arlington if they can just take care of their business down the stretch. Now, from Iowa State to next in line is K-State, and they lost the game to Houston, and Chris Kleiman and company with some answers that they need. Your thoughts about we'll start, Craig, with you, the Wildcats.
Yeah, that was a really tough loss. Another one that you weren't expecting whatsoever, but give credit to Houston's defense. They played really well as they have throughout the year, and Avery Johnson throws a couple of picks. The run game doesn't even reach 100 yards. I mean, that's not something you would have predicted against anybody. You're fumbling all over the place, even though you're able to get on them. That's the thing against Houston. They will knock some balls loose, and you got to be really careful. But, I mean, that was a close game on the road against a very gritty Houston team, and they got caught slipping, and that was a bad performance offensively, due in part to Houston, and they really put themselves in a crunch now as far as their big picture aspirations of even a Big 12 championship. They're no longer in control. Now they get to play Iowa State at the end of the year, and maybe that's a winner goes on to Arlington type of a game, but I think that was an unexpected loss last week that had most of the commentators, our boys, John Kurtz and Fitz and those guys, like, I didn't get any sense that they had any iota of any inkling that was in the cards last week. And so that was really surprising. And now you get a little bit of a break the second bye week, so that's good that you can kind of lick your wounds. It also sucks because you have to do it following a loss like that, but I expect we'll see a polished and geared up K-State team ready to have a strong close.
Yeah, they better. I mean, like that's one of the things they've moved themselves out of options. Like, got to win it. They have to win out, and that means getting in the Big 12 championship and winning that one too. So if they want to be a playoff team like they think they are, well, you got to be done losing. You have to be done losing.
Kansas might have the toughest schedule down the stretch. I haven't looked at all the other ones, but they have the game this weekend at Iowa State. Oh, no. Home against Iowa State, wherever home is for them this week, at BYU, and then Colorado. They end at Baylor, but they play the three of the top 25 ranked teams in the conference, back to back, starting with this week. They were beaten in that deadly game a couple of weeks ago against Kansas State. They now have Iowa State, the Jayhawks. Paul?
They just haven't been good in the fourth quarter. I mean, they don't know how to close. I'm curious to see how they do down the stretch, because I think that will inform Lance Leipold of what to build this team around next year and see what changes he has to make. But it's all it's all over but the shouting for them, to me. And my questions about them are: can Jalen Daniels play well enough down the stretch where he either comes back to Kansas next year or he jumps in the portal for another opportunity? Is it kind of over for them there? I don't know. There's a lot more questions than answers, but this is the stretch of the season where they have to see what they can actually build around for 25.
Well, I mean, technically there's still an opportunity to make a bowl game, even though it seems like a really long shot because of the schedule that you pointed out. It's been a rough year, a very forgettable year, and much closer to the old days that nobody wants to remember than the days of the last year or two where things were looking like they were skyrocketing towards, being on top of the Big 12, or at least in the mix for that. So I still think they're a better team than their record indicates, but their record does have the opportunity to get way worse because of what is lined up. Now, we should know this. Home for them is Arrowhead Stadium this week. So, I mean, that's where they've been, multiple times already. And so that should be nice and comfortable for them. I don't know how much of an advantage at all it really gives them. But Iowa State and Kansas, by the numbers, is actually a much closer game than you would probably expect given the records, if you just look simply at those. A lot of metrics have this as still an Iowa State favored to win type of a game, but not like 80-20 or 70-30, even more like 54-45-ish kind of percentages. So I think Kansas has every reason to believe they can have a chance to win this game, but it's going to come down to, not turning the football over. And Jalen Daniels playing good ball, which he's done at times this year. It hasn't been all bad, but he's also had some, obviously like that Kansas State game, some not so good moments. So start with him protecting the football. Let's go from there. But they've got the weapons to make this interesting, and obviously there's probably not a lot of love lost between these two. So I'm expecting a feisty game, although you'd probably wish that Iowa State wasn't rolling in off of a loss that kind of wakes them up and pisses them off a little bit. But you've also had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So I'd imagine they're going to have some fun stuff to bring out and try to go on a run here at the end of the year.
And we end the North with what we've said: Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State. with now West Virginia?
I mean, try to make a bowl game, West Virginia. I mean, that's the thing they've got to do. I'll still contend that I think that Neil Brown can't really do much to change their stars, but Nico Marchiol makes it interesting. Like, see what they can do. I mean, they still got a chance. What, 4-4? Is that what they are? 4-4?
Yep.
Yeah, 4-4. So they still got a chance to kind of turn it around and be what they were last year. So they're standing on the precipice of at least be what you were last year, which was 9-4 eventually as a team with a bowl win. So be 9-4, be 8-4, or kind of flail around like you've been all year.
Yeah, West Virginia's got a chance to make a bowl game. I think that's the bare minimum of what you expected coming into this season. I don't know if you're going to be able to match last year's record at this point. Means you'd have to win out, and I don't think that's in the cards for them, but I definitely think they can go on a little bit of a run here. I mean, they went out and beat Arizona on the road, which was a good thing. They've had a couple of road wins in a row now after going 0-2 to start because they had to go to Penn State and Pittsburgh. So they've been able to reverse that, getting into Big 12 play. And I think Arizona's obviously a wounded duck right now, but you just didn't know because so was West Virginia rolling in, and they went there and they took care of business. So now traveling again, and we'll see if their road improvements can continue on, but I think this is a really intriguing game with Cincinnati because I think they're pretty close in stature, and this is a life in the Big 12. Most of these games are like this. Again, I'll talk about how every game is winnable for every team, or you want to call it a coin flip game or whatever. I think that's exactly what this is, even though I'd slightly favor Cincinnati. I think this probably comes down to quarterback play. I would definitely take Sorsby over Marchiol, but I do think you've seen some really good things from Marchiol, who fans have been clamoring for now for a couple of years, but especially of late with the way that Garrett Green's performed, and also the fact that part of that is due to him being banged up as well. But when things aren't going well, you want to see something positive, and so people were crying out for the young quarterback to see what he's got, and he's definitely got more work to do, but he's flashed enough that you feel like you've got a chance this weekend. You feel like maybe there's some excitement and ability to win some games down the stretch. I don't know how hot the seat is for Neil Brown this week, but go lose to Cincinnati, and we'll hear all about it again if you drop under 500. So this is a big game for them to stay on course and not fall underwater and start having to gasp for air, because then I think that's when it gets really toxic out there in Morgantown around Neil Brown once again.
The Big 12, and we'll head into Paul's top 5 in a moment. The Big 12 right now, the following teams have clinched at least a bowl, and there are bigger fish to fry. BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Arizona State. There are Cincinnati, Baylor, TCU have 5 wins. 4 wins for West Virginia, Houston, UCF, Utah. And then Arizona, Oklahoma State, 3, and Kansas with 2. There are a bunch of teams. Now, a lot of them might end up playing each other to knock 1 or 2 out, but there are still a ton of teams who are trying to get bowl eligible, and that will be fun to watch. There's 4 weeks left. I mean, there's nobody is mathematically out of making it to a bowl game, no matter how bad Oklahoma State has been down the last 6 weeks.
Sorry, that's why I don't like how much we're already consuming the playoff talk from last night. It's fun to talk about. It's interesting to talk about, but it does start to, if there's anything, and I was going to bring this up with Zach Gelb, of you asked him about the expanded playoff and whether it's taken away. And I think pretty much across the board, unanimously, everybody would say no, it's only added to it. But I'm curious to see if that remains the case here in this last month, where everything becomes just about the playoff now, right? Versus it was just about the games up to this point and the craziness and all that. We're going to have all that still, but is every outcome, instead of it being about bowl eligibility or whatever, now like, well, how does it affect the playoff? You know what I'm saying? Yep. So hopefully that's not the case, because there are interesting storylines just like that we'll still cover about just getting bowl eligible, and those are subplots that are going to be a lot of fun to track over this last course of the season that have nothing to do with the playoff necessarily. So that's got to stay in focus as well.
All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina's top 5. Again, I mentioned Paul's doing the show tomorrow. Craig and I have a high school game as we wrap up the regular season and district schedule. And then on Friday, I'll handle it with Garrett. We'll have some of the guests that mix back and forth between Thursday and Friday. Emery Winters working on 365 Sports tonight on the local CW, and we appreciate him for doing that. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5. And it's idealmri.com. It's a building. It's actually a physical building, but they are on the website idealmri.com. Dr. Rob Maxey and the partners, built a phenomenal business for, yes, them, but for you, the customer. That's what it's supposed to be like, right? Their state-of-the-art imaging machine will help you and your doctor find out what is bothering you. Lord knows I've been in it for my lower back and for my shoulder. They have this state-of-the-art imaging machine. Incredible staff of Texan specialists. Those who also contact you to set up an appointment. Those who you see when you walk through the front door inside the Central Texas marketplace. They also won't charge you more than $497. I was like, wait a minute. I remember when I first heard that, I was like, wait a minute. No, I have had 4 MRIs inside of their machine. Well, one recently after Medicare, so that, of course, took care of it. But $497. We have had you viewers who have contacted me, have driven in from Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and even Dallas to come down here or up here to get an MRI because of that cost. Will save you a ton of money. The average is $1,100. $497 every single time at idealmri.com.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into the Top 5. Tomorrow, we'll have a special guest, Top 5 presenter. Thought I would change it up for you guys. So, special guest, Top 5 presenter. I'll just tease you. It'll be about TCU, so TCU fans will want to tune in to that. We'll have a special presenter who's not me. I'll be here with him, but changing things up just to try to keep it fresh here on the Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Today, things to notice in the CFP rankings. Number 5. They love the SEC, particularly Alabama, who, with 2 losses, has no business being ranked above a team like Iowa State or Boise State or SMU, but they had the win against Georgia, so let's pretend like Nick Saban is still there and it's still the Alabama team. They've got 2 losses. 1 to Tennessee, which choked me up. No, 1 to Tennessee, who's number 7 in the rankings, and 1 to Vanderbilt, who's not ranked. That is not as punished as, say, SMU's loss to BYU, who is undefeated and ranked above Alabama. None of this makes sense, but it's the first one. But the SEC still has historical love within that room. Number 4, the Big 12 and ACC have less mulligans. We knew this anyway, but after the last couple weeks, you see Clemson way down in the poll. They're on the outside looking in. They pretty much have to win the conference now to get into the playoffs. So does Kansas State. Iowa State took a loss, and they're on the outside looking in. So the only way the Big 12 gets to is if BYU's only loss is to Iowa State, and Iowa State's only loss is to Texas Tech. That's the only way that can happen. Kansas State now, like I said before, can only get in if they win the conference. So less mulligans in those two leagues than everybody else. Also, SMU and Miami could probably only be the only two teams from the ACC that got in, but it would have to mean they both went out until the championship game, and then SMU wins the championship game, and they both get in at 12-1. Number 3, Penn State has no consequences. Look, they don't have a good schedule. They just lost to the only really good team that they'll play on that schedule, and they'll probably fall ass backwards into the playoffs. I don't like this. You've heard me talk about it the last couple of days. I think it's bogus that Penn State has no consequences for being a just better than average team. That's what they are, and with all the historical bias that exists inside the playoff, why this little nugget hasn't popped in blows my mind. I'm going to stop talking about Penn State because it sends me into a blind rage. I don't get it. I get they have cool uniforms, but they don't win in big spots, and they haven't for a long time. They've got one big win in the last 12 years. WTF. Number 2, I'm going to get back into this. Alabama at 11? Really? Really? What do they have to do? They have less than no consequences. They're like getting rewarded here. What is going on? And I'm not one of those guys who wants to bitch about the college football playoff rankings, but sometimes I see something like this and you're like, I don't understand. But on the bright side, there are pathways for a lot of teams. I described some of those earlier. The ACC gets 2 in, more than likely if SMU wins out, and Miami's only loss would be to SMU. The Big 12 gets 2 wins if Iowa State wins out, and BYU's only loss is to Iowa State. So there are pathways. And there are pathways for not just one Group of 5 team, for 3 of them. For Army, who's the lowest ranked one, for Wazoo, and for Boise State. Now, Wazoo needs Boise State to lose again and then win out because Wazoo's loss is to Boise State. But that's a pretty damn good loss to have overall. Now, the wins they have will not stack up against anybody because of their, skeleton schedule they had to make since the Pac-2 is the Pac-2. But there are pathways for teams that are not in the SEC and the Big Ten, but those teams have more consequences than the other 2 leagues do. But we knew that going in. But I do see some bright side coming in the college football playoff. Call me optimistic, which you never will, but this is Top 5. I'm Paul Catalina. Let's wrap up the show.
You are most unoptimistic person I think I've known.
I think I've changed. I think I've changed a little bit. I think I've changed. I've had to reinforce that very recently, as a matter of fact. So
okay, good, because you used to be like.
Admittedly, I thought if something bad could happen, it would, and that why would good things happen, and that the world was, a terrible place.
And the good news is that because of your previous personality, Florida State had the year they had.
Yeah,
something bad could happen.
It's it.
Yeah.
I think I've been a little bit better.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul Catalina, and also TexasBeefHouse.com. Don't forget, November the 9th, this weekend, they have a live auction on site at their ranch just outside of Tyler and in between Tyler and White House. Craig Smoak, thank you very much. Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway. Thanks to those of you today in the chat room. It has been rather interesting. I haven't had a chance to get back in there for a little bit, but thank you to everybody, even those who like to cause trouble, like everybody. I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.